Trees was cut down, completely cut down. No, and we went and got Burl. They cut down Joe's trees.
Move over here.
Kidding me? We loaded him in a truck, went down to Joe's place. They cut down your trees, get line on. I saw it from the city. They're gonna build a bus. Right behind your house.
How this horse is doing in all this weather. You're getting fat. You're feeding them too much food. Are they on alfalfa or what are they on? No, it's grass. What do you do? Mostly alfalfa, but they loaded me up with a whole bale of grass, which is great too.
Do you want us to go ahead and start?
I like that.
We're gonna
I think
start, you guys are ready.
Everybody that votes for it.
It is lousy.
Yeah, especially down by the mouth of the canyon.
I bet, that's what's always the worst, is when you go through that draw. Yeah. Oh, there's Mike, okay. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and let Mike get sat down. Glad to have you. Did you get your coat off? I'd like to welcome you to our Planning Commission meeting this evening. This is Planning Commission meeting for December 13th, 2022. And we're really happy to have all of you with us, you residents with us. This meeting is being recorded. And we're going to begin our meeting this evening with an opening prayer by Commissioner Johnson and then a pledge of allegiance by Commissioner Callis.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for this opportunity we have to meet together today and to discuss the matters pertaining to this great city. We're grateful for the opportunity we have to live here and to work here. We're grateful for the many blessings that we've been blessed with, that we've been blessed with abundance of life here in this great community. We ask that it please bless us that we can make decisions that will be wise and be in the best interest of this city this day. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Would the audience please arise and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll begin our meeting this evening with an audible roll call of the commissioners. Sharon Call, here. Mike Marchbanks.
Here.
Jared Showers.
Here.
Rob Callis.
Here.
Stephen Johnson.
Here.
Scott Thompson.
Here.
And Renee Tribe. Hasn't joined us yet. We're going to, we've received the minutes from our last meeting, and commissioners have had a chance to review those minutes. These are the minutes from November 29th, 2022. And I've reviewed the minutes. I didn't see any corrections. Did any of you? Any additions? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes as printed.
I second that motion.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. And I think I just saw Commissioner Tribe come in. There she is. Okay. Okay, the next item on our agenda, this is a time for public comment. This would be for any items that are not already on the agenda for this evening. Is there anyone here for that purpose? Okay. The next item on our agenda, this is a plat amendment. This is for amended Plat B of the Mazzana Acres subdivision at 288 West, 570 North, and 279 West, 570 North. Our applicant is Spencer Corbridge, and if you'd like to come up, Spencer. And our presenting staff is Mary Barnes.
Thank you. So the applicant, Spencer Corbridge, has applied for a plat amendment in this location to slightly amend the lot lines of 288 West and 279 West, 570 North, or Lot 19 and 20, as shown in the proposed Plat B. This amendment is necessitated by a few things. The neighboring development, Songbird Cove, they've been going through the development process and discussions of how to put the extension of 570 North in. Questions on how the right-of-way will work with as the existing property line for Lot 20 down here. So this is 570 North, and as 570 North extends through Songbird Cove, it's going to dip down a little, and it would clip a bit too much of the edge of this Lot 20. So this plat amendment will come back to it. This plat amendment will take away this front, right here, this front area. It gives it to Lot 119. It's about maybe 500 square feet, but it adds about 4,000 square feet in this back area to Lot 20. So no, overall loss will happen. There will be about 6 feet of frontage that's taken off Lot 20, but it still has 130 feet of frontage, and the required amount is 100 feet. So it still is a conforming lot within the R120 zone. Same with Lot 19. There's a small, you can kind of see there's this dip right here. There's a small amount of square footage that has been added to Lot 19 with the development of the neighboring parcels. About the PUEs, you may have read in your staff report, but the existing PUE for Mazzana Acres Plat A was about 8 feet on the west property lines. The applicant has decided to keep that existing PUE, which is 8 feet, and then add the 5-foot PUE that is now required on the side of all residential lots, and then fill in any gaps between that 5 feet and that existing 8 feet to create essentially a very large PUE area, as you can see down here, 21-foot PUE. There is, I believe, and Spencer might be able to correct me on this, there's a sewer line going through here. That's what Galloway Engineering told us, is a sewer line going through this existing PUE, and so that just adds to the necessity of kind of keeping that existing while cleaning up any gaps that there might be with putting in a 5-foot PUE as well. Let's see. And one other thing I wanted to mention is detail A right here, showing the sidewalk easement dedication. It'll be a little less than 3 square feet. The sidewalk will just barely clip. Here, I'll zoom in to detail A. Here. The sidewalk will barely clip Lot 20, which necessitates this tiny sidewalk easement. And with that, if you have any questions on this plat amendment? Yes.
If you look at the image, the Google image, you'll see the, for lack of a better term, the homemade cul-de-sac there that it was there's no curb and gutter there, right?
Yeah, there's,
Sidewalk?
well, there's no sidewalk, but I think there is curb, right?
I don't remember, it'll all be straightened out,
Yeah,
That'll
it'll all
that'll
be
go
taken
in.
out. Mm-hmm.
Okay, on both sides.
yes.
And it shows it a little bit better, I believe, on this plat, or maybe it doesn't. Well, that's okay. But, oh no, it does show it pretty well here. So, as you can see, this 570 North shown on the Manzana Plat B plat, it's a little bit, well, it's a 50-foot wide public street, but of course, right here, 570 North, as it goes into Songbird Cove, it's going to narrow down to about 41
Right.
feet wide. So there will be there will be a few sections of area that don't have a road on it and are technically still within the city right-of-way. Does that make sense? With this wide public street, but it's actually narrowing here. So there will be a section that will be within the city right-of-way, but will not be being used as a street. So the applicant has decided to just let that be and let the property owners of Lot 19 and Lot 20 use those areas, right? Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mike?
And this is something that's been in the works for a long time. The Alvards, they're in Lot 20. I remember them asking, even before the Corbridges bought the property, they were wanting a little bit more property in their backyard. And so this is something that's probably been in negotiation for at least a year or so, or longer on this, so.
Do you have anything additional? Are you through, Mary?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for your time. One thing I may just add to it, if we go to slide 13, one thing that we've discovered in our design process, if we zoom up right there where 570 North meets the property, you'll notice there's actually two property lines there. There's land in the middle that's unclaimed. It doesn't necessarily belong to anybody, and so what the fence that exists there is in the middle of that unclaimed area. And so what we're proposing for lot 19, the Stewart's property, is to adopt the fence line as the new property line, as I think most people kind of expected or assumed it was. That actually gives most of the land, just by a small percentage more, to the lot 19, and just kind of splits the difference of that unclaimed land. On the Albert property, or lot 20, that same issue exists, but what we're proposing there is to address that, but also kind of just pivot that lot line so that the Songbird Cove property has the full right-of-way. It doesn't go through the Albert property. It gives the Alvards more property in their rear yard for a more usable rear yard, and squares up that lot there on the edge of Songbird Cove. And so we think this is a proposal that's a win-win for all, and addresses a couple of issues, being the unclaimed land and also the right-of-way in the process as well.
Anyone have questions?
So my only question on what you drew, and it's not, so on the north side, the sidewalk's just gonna end at the fence?
No, the
it,
sidewalk
it'll
will continue.
it'll be continued.
It'll
throughout.
continue around, but there'll be kind of a, because the road,
So we'll actually be saw cutting the asphalt and bringing the driveway of lot 19 down to the road. So their driveway will be less steep, and we'll be installing curb and gutter in that area.
so that it's not shown on there, but there'll be curb and gutter connecting the road.
That's correct.
Right there, okay,
Yeah.
that was my question on that clarification there. And then the sidewalk will, on the south side, will just continue on through.
Yeah, there would also be sidewalk connecting where the roundabout, or, yeah, cul-de-sac is.
Where it
Right.
goes through.
Yeah.
And I guess I can just attest to what Mike says. The Alvards have mentioned to me many times that they're trying to get this worked and how to get it worked. And I'm grateful that the Colbridges and the cities worked with them to try to make this work.
Yeah.
Any other questions from commissioners? Do we have anyone here from public that would like to make comments? This isn't a public hearing, but if you have a comment, we'd be happy to hear that.
Awesome. Thought you'd want better.
Sure.
Amy Alvord. I live at 725
279 West, 570 North, lot number 20. And we are the ones that kind of approached Spencer about like kind of straightening that property line. It's just really a weird angle, deep corner for that lot that's right next to our house. And it's kind of the same issue with the lot up at the front of our property towards the road. It's kind of some useless property that kind of making this line adjustment makes those pieces of property more useful for both of us. But also, and I came in late because of the weather, but I don't know if they mentioned that our house sewer is connected on that old line that runs on the west side of our house along the property line. We have sewer that our sewer doesn't connect to 570, it connects actually to 500 behind us, to the south of us. So the Public Works has been working with us as well on figuring out how we connect our sewer to the road, and by doing this line adjustment, they actually have come out and done some measures and some studies and found that that actually works better for them. They can come out into this new property and not disturb, any of our other existing landscaping and whatnot to fix that sewer problem.
Well, this sounds like a great
Yeah.
answer for everyone.
I feel like it's a win-win, and so anyway, I just thought I would mention that we're definitely for this, and we just feel like it will be a great situation that solves several issues.
Well, and as far as we're concerned, as far as the property owners have negotiated this, our role is just to make the plat amendment, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know if the Stewarts are here, if they made it here either, but.
Anyone else with comments? Okay. Okay, I don't have questions, and if no one else, if there's anyone else that does either, then, do we have a motion?
I'd be happy to entertain the motion. I move that we approve the applicant's request for the plat amendment approval of the Monsana Acres Plat B with the following conditions. Number one, the applicant will continue to work with city staff to make all technical corrections as necessary to the plat prior to recording. Two, the applicant will obtain all necessary utility notifications prior to the final plat approval. Three, prior to plat recording, the applicant will update the final plat Mylar to include notarized signatures of owner's consent to dedication and obtain signatures of all entities indicated on the subdivision plat attached here too. And number four, all items of the staff report.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. And thank you for being here with us. Appreciate it. Okay, the next item on our agenda, let me get to that. This is item number 5. It's a site plan approval for Colts Neck, or the fence specialist. Our applicant is Tim Clyde. Is Tim here? Thank you. And our presenting staff is Michael Florence.
Thank you, Commissioners. So Mr. Clyde has applied for site plan approval. The City Council on October 2019 rezoned this property from residential R120 to general commercial. We've been working with Mr. Clyde to submit a site plan application for this property. So it's currently being used as a storage yard for fence specialists. The City Council, one of the items that was presented to the City Council was the need for this to be used for vehicle deliveries as well, so they come off State Street and then to go out onto 400 North. And so what you're reviewing this evening is the site plan approval for the site improvements. So this is a storage lot that would be connected to fence specialists. The improvements that would be installed are curb gutter and sidewalk and storm drainage in the right-of-way, and then landscaping and fencing behind the right-of-way, and I'll go into more detail on that. The applicant is proposing to phase this project into 3 phases over a 3-year period. Phase 1 would be the storm drain improvements along 400 North. Phase 2 would be the splitting the property in half, would be the west side. That would be fixing or replacing asphalt, adding the curb gutter and sidewalk, and the west half of the landscaping, and the fencing would probably go in sooner than later. There would also be required a fence on between the east property, east residential home and this property. And that would need to be a concrete or masonry fence. And then phase 3 would be the east improvements. So that would be from the middle of the property east. That would be the curb gutter, sidewalk, asphalt, and landscaping for that section of the property. Mr. Clyde has recently removed a lot of the dead vegetation on the property. The Planning Commission would need to specifically approve the phasing plan as a condition of approval. The city ordinance allows a property owner to phase the project over time. And so the conditions of approval that staff has written for your consideration are listed above. The main one that all improvements be installed and completed by December 31st, 2025. That this storage yard is connected with the fence specialist and can't be sold separately as a storage yard, and that the landscaping requirements meet our city code. So with that, do you have any questions for myself or Mr. Clyde?
I'm not sure I understand why we're phasing it. Could the applicant?
Money, it's not a loan, so I'm paying for it out of my pocket. We've got to put about 280 feet, probably 290 feet of storm drain in, which is not cheap, and curb and gutter and sidewalk. So if you could look, oh, Mike, do you have a pointer?
I don't.
So in front of Steve Johnson's property is where the storm drain ends in the middle of the road. So I've got to go down and connect to that with a 15-inch pipe and then run that all the way up to the other edge, which is where Betty Clark's property is at, and bury that, and it's not cheap.
Yeah. You came before us a couple of years ago.
Correct.
I can't remember. Can you?
The zone change.
Just the zone
Commercial.
change. You've used that lot as a storage.
It was to drive out. We don't really store much out there. We put pallets out there. It's unsecured. We put some trailers out there, but we've had a couple stolen. So we don't like anything being out there.
You don't put inventory out there? Yeah,
Not at all.
yeah,
Unless I want it to disappear.
yeah.
What would you use it for during the 3-year period?
Well, this is what Mike was talking about. We would extend that fence out to the right-of-way, well, not to the right-of-way. There's a 20-foot setback that has to happen from behind the curb and gutter and sidewalk, behind the sidewalk. So we would extend out a fence out there along 400 North and then landscape on that other side and carry down the other side and then remove that fence between it. Just basically cleaning up the whole property and putting the curb and gutter and sidewalk in.
So when would the curb gutter and sidewalk go in?
That's within the phases. So the first phase is the storm drain, connecting the storm drain and bringing that all the way down. The second phase is doing curb and gutter and sidewalk on the west side. The third phase is curb and gutter and sidewalk on the east side. My plan is to try to do this quicker, but it all depends on the cost.
I have a little bit of heartburn with that phasing. I mean, you know, if somebody builds a house, we don't give them an occupancy permit until they get everything done.
I mean, these are different. This is a different situation. Plus, your code allows us to do it in 3 phases over a 2-year period per phase. So we technically, based on your code, you guys can give me up to 6 years to do it. The only reason I'm just talking about 3 is because it's out of my pocket.
Well, and
That's been an unsightly area now for years. And sure would be nice to get the curb gutter and sidewalk done, and get some improvements started on 4th North.
Correct.
even though, you know, you talked about the phasing could take up to 6 years. One of the conditions that staff has put in here as far as approval is that it be installed, inspected, and approved no later than December 31st,
Correct.
2025. So
Correct.
that would only give you the 3 years.
That's correct.
So
Okay.
he's being assertive in getting it done. It could, technically, we could give him 6 years, but he's willing to do it in 3.
Or
Well,
less.
but does our ordinance allow 6 years, though?
Yeah, it
Yes.
says,
It
let
does.
me go to
Okay.
that. I reviewed that with Brian this afternoon.
Okay.
Let me find that. Yeah, it says, the city understands that due to financial constraints, let me zoom in on that a little bit. Due to financial constraints, some developments will be required to be constructed in multiple phases. As such, Lindon City is willing to make some accommodations to allow phased development for site plans. Phased development must be clearly distinguished during application submittal and approved by the Land Use Authority, which is the Planning Commission. Application approval will be subject to the site plan expiration timelines. Each successive phase must be completed within 24 months of the previous phase, with all phases of the site plan being completed within 6 years. So Brian looked at that and said within 6 years, so that you could negotiate less than that. And that's what Mr. Clyde is proposing, is the 3 years.
And I asked you about that earlier, and that's why
Yeah.
the condition is 3 years. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
But you're planning on using the entire location.
Well, yes.
Okay.
So,
Is the berm gonna stay there or go?
No, the berm is being removed, and then that's where landscaping will end up in. Plus part of that berm is actually where curb and gutter and sidewalk would be. There's it's a power pole, but there's no power on it. It's actually got the other utilities on it, fiber and stuff like that. That is actually in the middle of the berm, which is actually in the middle of the sidewalk.
yeah, that was gonna be my question, Tim, because
Yeah.
there's one
Right,
Right.
down by you guys. Yeah.
that's just off our property, that was on the Pizza Factory's property.
Yeah.
When we built. So I just didn't know if that's gonna cause any issues. It caused some issues for our building. We cannot get any telephone service to our building from that pole because it's in an incorrect location. So the city won't get at the time, wouldn't give us a permit to get phone service down it because it's not in the right location. We had to go with cable, or we had to, find another way to get phone service into the building because of that telephone pole, and it wasn't worth it to move a pole not on our property.
expensive.
Do you see any problems with that, with the city, with them doing this?
Do you
Is
want
the
me to
city
answer that,
gonna
Mike, or?
let people go down this pole now, because of the way?
I don't think we have that history. What our engineers have done is just, it shows the sidewalk going around the pole there.
Right, which I think is a good
So-
solution, especially if the city will let people pull stuff off of it. I know,
Yeah.
like I said, the one that we had, that because it was the wrong location, it just severely limited our options there to get any utilities off that pole.
Right.
Which was mainly telephone, right? Anything from the telephone company. We couldn't get it off that, so.
Well-
It sounds like that's been addressed, hopefully. I don't want that to become something.
No,
later.
it was something that we had talked about several times because of the issue of it, because it's not just moving one pole.
We'd have to move the whole line.
You're moving the
but-
whole line from basically State Street all the way up to Locust,
Right,
which is a ton of money.
yeah.
If you can get the utilities to do it.
Pole just go away?
I don't know.
You've got multiple lines on it, that's the problem.
Yeah, I think cable
There's a
and telephone.
Starlink?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it sounds like your landscaping plans are really good, though. When I read through it, the English hawthorn trees and the
Yeah.
Carl Forster grass and Russian sage, and it sounds like you're having a landscape specialist even put that in.
Well, we want it to be low maintenance, water conservative, and, stay within approved stuff that the city allows to, within the
Right.
trees and stuff, yeah.
Yeah,
Plus, we don't want anything necessarily even in the placement of those, we don't want, the size of trees that we picked is we don't really want them to grow up into those lines, because then they'll just come cut them.
Yeah.
Right, right. And then you'll have the masonry fence next to the residential and,
Yeah, that's what's required by the city code. We'll address that. I mean, we'd prefer to go actually higher than the 7 feet, which is what your minimum. We want to go to 8. 7 is an odd height
isn't
problem.
our ordinance at least 7 foot, or does it say, spell out 7 foot?
It says minimum 7 foot.
Minimum, yeah, that's what
Yeah.
yeah. So he could go to 8 if he
Yes.
wanted to. Okay. I don't have any other questions. Do any of you have questions? For Mr. Clyde or Mike Florence? I think it's great that you're getting that property looking nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the timeline's reasonable.
Well, the 3 years, the 6 years would really draw that out as long as it's gone already.
Yeah.
So the 3 years a much better plan.
And I think you said this, Tim, but just to clarify in my mind, when this is done, you're basically gonna take the fence down in between and just extend your yard?
Yeah, so
So
it's
it's
actually
become one big yard then instead of two?
Yeah, yeah. It's
Okay.
not actually that part, because it's not out on 400 North. This doesn't show up on this plan, but
Right.
that is part of the plan.
But that's what you, I kinda heard was gonna happen, just to
Yeah.
kind of extend the lot.
Yeah, yes.
Perfect.
So where the 8-foot fence between you and I ends and then drops down, basically from there across.
That's gonna be the new lot.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's where the new fence line would go, which will then give us a better angle and coming out on a 400 North.
The trucks.
Yeah.
So do you do masonry fences?
We do
as well
not,
as-
no, that's a whole different ballgame. Unfortunately, no.
Yeah, that's what I wondered. I thought, that's great if you do.
And I don't know, Mike, I know when we built our building and his property was residential at the time,
Right, that's correct.
because we both wanted it, we did go with vinyl. Does the code still allow that if you?
No.
It doesn't allow that anymore?
No.
Okay.
Not next to residential.
Right.
Okay, well, are we ready for a motion?
Do you want, I believe there's a number of people here. Do you
Oh.
want to?
Yeah.
Are there, oh, I'm sorry. Are there residents that would like to make comments? It's not a public hearing, but we would allow comments. So, excuse me for doing that.
No problem. My name's Mike Harper. I live straight across the street from Tim Clyde's business.
Okay,
Brought you some stuff to take a look at. Kind of follow along with me. I wrote down a few thoughts so I could.
oh, you really have done a lot of work on this. I'm sorry I
Yeah.
didn't recognize you sooner.
Over here. Thanks. When I built my home 39 years ago across the street from Tim Clyde's business, Mrs. Raymond lived there. It was all horse property, cows, horses, all the way to Lindon City Park. Betty Clark's property was to the left of that, and she still owns that property this day, little by little. Back then, Lindon City building didn't ask the property owners what they thought about any of their new building. They just built, let Alpine School District buy the property from whoever owned it. That away, they built, as you can see in the back of here, I can show you. I've got it down here marked in the back as to what property and what was put in time. So when I was there, it was all horse property and our farm all the way around me. Little by little, Alpine School District built a building for special education that's still there. There's also another building that they built that Tim Clyde is right by that they have office space. I think there's a veterinary clinic there now. And at that time, we had no comment, they just built it. Then Tim Clyde comes in with his vinyl business, and they did call us and ask us what we thought. And he explained to us what he was planning on putting in and every one of our concerns that we had. Equipment, the noise of vinyl being cut up. We were told he'd cut no vinyl. He cut vinyl up from 7 in the morning and sometimes till 9 o'clock every day. We were told that he would, the city and Mr. Clyde said, we said we didn't want to see the mess that's across the street from me now, and it's been there ever since. He said he was putting in a stone fence all the way around his property, 10 feet high, just like what you see going out Provo Canyon. That isn't what's there now. And the city planners that were there at that time said he would not be allowed to have any of his material above his fence. It's 6 feet above his fence. He has cut a hole because they complained when I had Gary Hoagland and others, the mayor came up. He's not supposed to have a 20-foot hole in his fence, bringing his equipment in and out, loading his vinyl. It's all supposed to come off of State Street. When we brought that up to the Planning Commission, they said that's not an issue. It ain't coming across your property. It's not coming by your house. It's coming in off State Street. Tim Clyde said he had one load at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday that would show up, and that's it. No cutting up vinyl, stone fence, all of that, none of it. And then the property that now he's trying to approve, that was supposed to be twin homes, according to Mr. Clyde. He was going to build twin homes there, stone fence, and you'd see none of his vinyl business. So everything that Tim Clyde has said, and that the city planners at that time, all of our concerns were completely DQ'd because of what I just mentioned. Stone fence, no cutting up vinyl, twin homes across the street. Now it's going to be storage units. Well, I've had Tim Clyde there. I've had the mayor there. I've had Gary Hoagland in my place. Mayor, again, the new mayor, just up there this last summer. And everybody on this council through the years. And I've said, would you buy a house across from Tim Clyde? Tim Clyde told me no, he would not. Would you build one across from his business? No, he would not. I asked the mayor this year, could you take Tim Clyde's business as it has been for years and put it down on State Street, what's straight across the street from me? No, we would not. Why? Because it's an eyesore. It's deplorable. So my question would be, and as I've shown you, you can see the property that surrounds Tim Clyde's property, Mr. Johnson, Alpine School District, the car lot, the pizza place. Look at their property, and then the last two pictures I've got in there on the back of that. You'll see how Tim Clyde takes care of his property. No, not that one, but in the back, on the other piece of paper, this one. This shows an aerial view of all the properties that surround his property. Take a look at how Johnsons have their property, the pizza place has their property, the car dealership has their property, how we have our properties that live across the road. See how we have maintained that. And then take a gander at how Tim Clyde does his. Gary Hoagland told me when he bring these issues to Mr. Clyde, he couldn't get him to do anything. And the neatest thing about his new position with the city is he doesn't have to deal with Mr. Clyde. So, it's, and this is another thing. And every time for myself, and Alejandro Gomez and I have had questions, and same with Todd Carson back here. When I come out of my house, I listen to all the promises that the city made to us and that Tim Clyde made to us, and how not one single one of them has been honored, not a one. And it aggravates me every time I walk out of my house, and it will until the day I die. So, and Another thing, several years ago, my mom passed away. Her property abuts mine, Sondra's. We ended up selling it to them. I was gonna try to buy my brother and sister out of that property, because it would be a good deal. I owned a quarter of it, it would have been mine. Went to the bank. They came down and appraised it. And I had my property tax notice there. And the lady that come and appraised it said, we're gonna deduct $250,000 off of what we'd allow you for your property to be worth solely because of Tim Clyde's property. So my thing, I guess, at the very end is, if they said where you live, they're gonna build Tim Clyde's property across the street from you, would you say yes, let's have it, or not? And if you say no, that you're not gonna have his business, his property built across, they just got the money, and they rip out whatever houses are by you and put his business in. If you say no to that, how do you vote his business to take our property values down, diminish our lives and the property that we've had? I've been there for 40 years, long time before Tim Clyde was around. And I've got my property from a family. So should it be, they'd say, oh, your property's worth $800,000, we gotta take $300,000 off because of what's across the street from you. Not very good. I don't, you know, if you say you can't vote for that, then I don't see how you can vote that for us. So, you know, I guess that's my opinion on it. And Mr.
Appreciate your
Clyde has not
comments
been
very
a
much.
good neighbor. He's not supposed to do his business through his fence, not ever.
Okay.
And that's what he's done for forever, so.
Well, I think what our purpose with what we're doing tonight is to approve a lot of actions that will improve that property very much.
Well, is he gonna do it like he has done it? Is he gonna do it? I mean, you hear him say it's gonna be between 3, maybe 6 years. Gotta go deep, lots of money.
The condition is 3 years, and these are being regulated by ordinance. The property's approved as a commercial property now, and that's the reason the city is asking him to go ahead and do all these improvements.
You've already approved his property go from residential to commercial?
That was done in 2019.
How come you never, you've always allowed him to go when it was residential, to do his business through the fence? How come you've never been able to stop him from that? That's one of the things they said, you said. He's not gonna do that. That was a concern of ours. You guys said, he's not doing it. We said, we didn't wanna see his business, stone fence, didn't do it. And so I would leave this to you. Would you be willing to have Wells Fargo come down and appraise my property, everybody that's impacted by him? And wherever they say, for me, it'll be 250 to 300,000. And anybody along our road, and they say, because of his business, your place is gonna lose 50, 80, 100,000. And let Tim Clyde or Lindon City pay us cash for what we're losing on our property. Because when you guys go to sell your properties, you're gonna get top dollar. You're gonna get 100% and then some.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, we appreciate those comments tonight.
Yeah, but.
Appreciate that very much.
I know, but what you guys say you were gonna do, they've never done it. You never, ever done it. So Tim Clyde's saying he's building this thing, and it's just gonna be another, you see the pictures I put in there of his beautification? That was his beautification. When the mayor was there, it's 8 feet is the communication, data communication lines that you're talking about, the power line. I said, if that catches on fire, it's gonna take the fire department 15 minutes to get down here.
Okay.
That's gonna melt that whole line, and she says, you know, I never thought of that. But so, you know, that's what he does.
Well, thank you so much for your comments and for all your preparation. Okay, let's not, excuse me, let's not,
No comments?
No,
There?
okay.
Attack me the whole freaking time?
okay, let's go ahead and with other comments, and then we'll go ahead with the meeting. Thank you so much.
I'm Betty Clark, and I own the property that's on the east of this place. Now, the last time that we had this meeting, when we were having all the problem and that there was gonna have a fenced-in yard and all of this. At that time, there were some trees on the property line, and because it interfered with them fixing a fence, they cut the trees down. Well, we used the trees for shade for the horses in the pasture. But there was a partial part that they put, it had a vinyl fence. I would have been ashamed to have said that it was my company that had made the fence, because we have had to prop it up from the east side to keep it so that the horses didn't get out. And my understanding at the time that that fence was going to be made the vinyl clear to the property line of the city. And it hasn't been done.
Well,
I
now-
also want to say,
ahead.
put a word in for a friend of mine that lives across the street on 400 North, Dorothy Sizem, that her flower bed, she had a raised flower bed out in her front yard, and because one of the trucks that was in doing business with the fencing company run over and demolished that. And one of the conditions was that they were going to replace that, and it hasn't been done yet. It was going to be done within 10 days to 2 weeks. And nobody has come and said anything to her. She still doesn't have so the thing is, if the man won't honor his word with his neighbors to complete the work that he said that he would do before he did, and then to have allowed to put that berm in and never put any kind of watering system to keep it alive. And so here the last 2 years, I don't know about, I was ashamed to say that that was the street that I lived up because of that dead stuff. And I think it's implorable that our city keeps giving another chance. I think that all of these other promises need to be completed and filled before this is ever even considered.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else here this evening for this purpose? I think as far as discussion between the commission, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the whole intent of us creating this plan the whole intent is to put in place so that these things will happen. The landscaping will go in, the fencing will go in, the water systems will go in, the curb and gutter, all of those things. That's the whole intent of what we're doing tonight. So these are all great improvements to that property. As far as the fencing next to the residential, that will be a masonry fence, which should be a very nice fence. And we're taking this action, the city will follow up to make sure that those things happen. So I don't know if there's other comments from commissioners?
I've got a question.
Okay.
Is there going to be a bond posted for the improvements?
There will have to be, yes.
Well, that's way different than what's ever happened in the past. If he doesn't do what he says he's gonna do, the city can cash that bond in and do it themselves. So to me, we've come a long way in whatever's been happening in the past to ensure that with an assurance bond.
And I guess I would say with that, this is just part of the process that started with the rezone. It's taken a long time to get the site plan, but that's the process. When the rezone happened, this would be the next logical step to say you know, because as part of the rezone is it said he'd need to bring a site plan that would do all these things. And yes, it's taken a long time, but this is the site plan that actually puts in place all those promises on paper.
Well, if the commission approves it tonight, the clock starts ticking.
Yeah.
Those have to go in. If they don't go in, the city can call a bond. We could pull a business license. There's ramifications for that. And these are one of the many things we've been cleaning up lately. Like, you know, for example, the Island Dance Studio.
Right.
That took a couple years, but it looks fantastic. We've had a few others. And just to clarify, trucks will be able to go out to 400 North.
So they'll be coming in, trucks will just be coming in and out still.
They'll be coming in,
Straight across
they'll be allowed to come in off State Street, and that was a discussion with the city council in 2019 with the zone change. So they'll be able to come in off State Street and go out 400 North.
Grass will be out.
Yes.
400 North.
But they will
Right
be,
across my driveway. How do you get a semi with curb and gutter where that wall right there is, and you've got 15 feet? How does a truck come straight out through a cement wall that's a semi and make a left turn without coming across on our side of the road? I've had his guys come right up and make turns, U-turns right in my driveway, flipping around, coming in, forever. So, you know, I hear it and it sounds good, but when I brought it through the years, all the people that have come down, Gary Hoagland especially, just shakes his head and says, we know, broken record.
right,
That's the reason we're trying to take some of the actions we're taking tonight. And I agree, it hasn't looked nice. It hasn't. But those improvements are being put in place and, go ahead.
Okay. A couple
Go ahead.
questions.
Uh-huh.
The concrete fence on the east side, we know he's gonna put an 8-foot concrete fence, but does this trigger that 8-foot concrete fence to go all the way and continue across the existing vinyl fence that in theory would be in violation? Because it's residential abutting commercial. See what I'm saying, it's gonna stop there with a concrete fence and continue south along the vinyl fence. Is that gonna be, are we saying that's all gonna be one consistent 8-foot fence?
that'd be a good question. We're only reviewing this vacant property tonight, the undeveloped property. So that east side will have an 8-foot fence, but I don't know, Mr. Clyde may want to ask him to come up, please.
So there's a vinyl fence across our yard right now, but we're only talking about this additional parcel. So a lot of the stuff that's been talked about doesn't have anything to do with the original building, because it's a whole different separate parcel. So so all that would be required based off this is to just end, it's about 90 feet. But just like Betty said, there was an old ditch that was right there that ran along behind the school district's property and ran out to 400 North. It's an abandoned ditch. It actually flowed to the south is where it really went. Picked up storm drain, it picked up irrigation water off 400 North and went south. But once the school district ended up buying that property in there, they boxed it off and stopped it, so it didn't go anywhere. So the ground is kind of unstable between me and Betty, and that's why what she's talking about with the fence coming down by her horses and stuff like that. So my plan, what I want to do is I actually want to continue it past that. That's not a requirement based off this, but I want to take that whole vinyl fence down on that whole east side and run that whole mason area all the way down to the
Can we
corner.
add that as a condition of?
No, because it's a separate property.
Okay.
That's just what my plans are, is to take that down and do that. But it's grandfathered in. It's been there since 2003. So, but I want to continue that all the way through in this phase also.
When is the fence gonna be put in, phase 1 or? phase
Yeah,
3?
well, right now, actually.
Do you feel like there is room for your semis to egress onto 400 North?
100%. They can go either way because of the width.
Okay,
They come out and turn left now.
okay. But they're saying that it runs into,
Mike's
runs into
property's further
properties.
up. We don't even go by Mike's property. We go in front of Dorothy's.
Okay. Sounds like you've got some repair work to do on flower planter boxes and things like that, though, where it's hit.
And that was my next question is, can we include in phase one the requirement to remove the berm and clean up the?
Well, the
rather-
berm has to come out to put the storm drain in, which is phase one.
Okay,
Right,
okay, so
right,
that's-
it
okay,
does.
so
Yes.
So that will occur.
Yeah.
And
The
then-
reason that it
Yeah.
died, there's water on it. But the city cut my water off on that property because it wasn't developed. That happened years ago. That's why all the plants died.
But you'll put in all those watering systems again, where
I
you
can-
put,
Seriously,
Okay.
dude, you
No,
sit here
just
in these
address
personal
it.
attacks
Excuse
like you're
me.
ridiculous.
excuse me,
Like there's never been a stone fence, there's never been any of this stuff going around or
okay,
anything like
but we
that.
don't want to get
Right.
into that debate here.
So they didn't want me to sprinkle that anymore. They didn't want me to run it and it died. That's why.
Okay, okay.
So we took it down and went from there.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the steps you're taking with the city to make it look attractive there.
Right.
I mean, you probably know as well as anyone that the dead bushes and
Sure.
everything else along there hasn't really been very.
I mean, who I really need to address with anything is Betty because that fence line will affect
Okay,
right where her
Yeah.
property's at and stuff like that. So we need to
okay,
do something to secure the horses and stuff like that while we put that missionary wall in.
Okay.
And my understanding from what you just said, phase one, you probably want to fence in, make the fence part of your yard
Yes.
soon,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So that you're extending your yard
Yes.
and then putting the
Yes.
storm drain in would be part of phase one.
So what we'll do is we'll get it surveyed to make sure that we're at the right spot. You can see where the fence line is. Mike went across it really quick. And we'll put that fence in there, and then we need to come down between us and Betty.
Okay. So you're doing like the 20-foot in or whatever, right, fence?
Yes,
And then Betty's,
yes.
thank you.
So,
So can you get Dorothy a new flower bed then?
Sure.
She's
Okay.
a retired gal on a fixed income, and that was actually her present for retirement.
what is your name, sir?
It was a raised flower bed, got destroyed.
But what is your name?
Todd Carson.
Okay.
It was a,
Well, I think from what he's saying, he's willing to do that. And to restore
it was
that.
one of our customers. Their
Yeah.
truck wasn't in park and went right across 400 North and
It was an
hit a
accident.
bed.
It was an accident that happened.
Yep.
But it sounds like you're willing to make that right.
Just glad it didn't hit her house.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
commissioners, I think,
She would greatly appreciate it.
Sure.
Like in the next couple of
Okay.
weeks, maybe for Christmas.
Okay, excuse me. Okay.
That's easy enough.
Okay, go ahead.
with the fencing, that, you probably should add that if you, as a condition into phase one, if that's what you want, that as part of phase one.
So how would we word that then?
Just under your motion, just that,
Then we're gonna add
all
fencing
fencing
in
be
phase one.
installed as part of phase one.
Because it's not shown as part of phase one improvements at this point?
It's
I don't
not,
think it's in any of in any of the phases, so,
Because the improvements are based off 400.
yeah. So, I don't think that's a hard change to put in. It sounds like that's what he wants to do.
Okay,
Specify 8-foot masonry then?
we just,
In the-
we
in the
just have
motion?
to say, no, because the ordinance already requires a
Okay.
7-foot, minimum 7-foot. And so I think you can just be general that the fencing needs to be installed because staff will enforce the 7-foot fence minimum.
okay. Yeah, I mean, as long as our ordinance already states that, then if he wants to go 8-foot, it's fine,
That's fine.
right? Okay,
I think that's why it states it that way, is because it's actually more expensive to put a 7-foot fence in than it is an 8, because most of them don't make it. So,
okay.
Michael, what does the ordinance say about storage? And
Yeah.
height of storage and things like that?
So it's right here, 17.48.050. Let's see, no outdoor storage can be placed without any required fencing first being installed. For outdoor storage areas required to be visually obscured, the planning commission may approve a landscape screen in lieu of fence, which you're not doing, and that's not the proposal. Let's see. Oh, let's see. Number 4, stacking of merchandise or materials of any kind shall not be allowed to protrude above required walls or fence lines unless approved by a temporary use permit.
And that would have to come through the city.
That'd have to come through city staff, yes. So if Lindon City, 3 months ago, we just hired our first code enforcement officer. So if there's issues, the residents are welcome to reach out to the community development office, and we'll deal with those.
Okay.
Could we have
Excuse me,
those
go ahead.
mailed to us, please?
What?
Could they have these things that are to be followed mailed to us, so we'll know what Mr. Clyde is required?
It's online, it's online right
public.
now.
If you'll reach,
Yeah. and
if you'll reach
it's-
out to myself or Mary, we'll send you a link to this information.
That's
Right.
been one of my points here,
Right,
and it's 6 feet above his fence.
okay. No, there's always access to what goes on in these meetings and what's approved. Yes?
I have a problem with that because I'm kind of computer illiterate.
Okay,
Mike's
and
gonna send,
I do not have computer skills to follow, go to find whatever the city.
I would bet that if you made that request, they would send
So
you.
I would
a hard
request
copy.
that I get a personal letter.
absolutely.
I'm sure
We
that
can
could
send-
happen.
We can send that to her.
Yes, if you'll reach out to us with your information, your email address or your address, we'll be glad to provide you all the information from tonight's meeting.
Okay. And as far as the city's concerned, they follow up with inspections and all those kinds of things to make sure it's happening. So,
The city has my address. Do I need to give it to you particularly or?
not to me, but
We'll see.
We'll make sure, it gets to you.
Send me a bill.
so they've got it.
Yeah. Get everybody's address.
Okay. Well, unless there's other comments as far as the commission,
Well,
or, Go
Sharon,
ahead.
I have one more comment.
Okay.
I have a question
And
just
it's
after.
just a comment, and
okay,
as I too, like Rob, sort of have a little bit of concern with the phasing, only
Mm-hmm.
because of the problems this has caused for the neighborhood. However, I understand it's in the city code, we can't change the city code, and that's not our position here. It is in compliance, so we have to go for it, but I too, like Rob, a little concerned, especially given the concerns of the neighbors.
well, and the concern I have is that we rezoned it to commercial in 2019.
Yeah,
So this should have been happening sooner than that.
yeah, that's just a.
But
The beauty of this, though, is once the bond goes in place, the time starts clicking, and
Correct.
somebody will end up putting them in. If for some reason something were to happen to Mr. Clyde and it didn't happen, the money should be there to.
Yeah, the bond would put him in.
to take care of the improvements.
So, Mike, just to clarify, we've talked a lot about passing stuff. As far as staff is concerned, this site plan meets all requirements of the city.
So there's a few technical things that still need to be addressed on it. And we've given those reviews to Mr. Clyde, and we are waiting on another updated plan. But that's why we have as a condition that the plans will meet development specifications. The applicant will continue to work with the city engineer and the landscaping requirements. And so, yes, we
But
we
nothing
will
that the staff can't
This
technically.
is 99% there.
Perfect. And, no, I guess it's back. That pole doesn't affect the storm drain, hopefully. Where that pole is, the storm drain can go, hopefully, I'd assume on the south of the pole.
Yeah, the storm drain actually goes out in the
Or,
shoulder.
so it'll actually go
It's in the
north.
shoulder of the road.
Okay, so it'll actually be north of the pole. Okay. Those were my main questions there.
Yeah, you can see that. It's a little hard to see, but you can see the storm drain line here,
Okay.
and then here's the curb and gutter, and then here's the sidewalk.
Just, or is it going to be, you'll figure it out, but like landscaped around that pole or something? It's just a difficult situation, right? The sidewalk's gonna go around, the curb will be on the roadside of that pole. So, you know, there's just a weed problem or whatever if you don't fill it in or
Yeah.
something with, and I'm sure that,
Something to go around
Something
there.
there.
Probably not landscaping, but we'll probably allow some type of gravel or.
gravel or zero scape.
Or xeriscape or something like that, or pavers.
The power company that owns the poles don't want to concrete it in.
Right, well, then you can't take
So,
anything down.
yeah, we would probably rock it.
Okay. Are we ready for a motion?
Just a comment
Okay.
before we have a motion. East of State Street, there's only 2 or 3 streets that go east in Lindon. And 4th North is one of the major arteries, probably carries more traffic than Center Street. 2000 South, probably more, a lot more than 2000 South too. So it's probably our busiest street. So I compliment Mr. Clyde in his plan to improve this. I just am having real heartburn with how long it's taking. You know, I'm a developer, and when we develop a piece of property, we're not able to use it until all the improvements are in. And so, boy, I've got to look at our city thing. Maybe we ought to review that. And why are we staging it so long? I don't understand that. I know the code says that, but maybe we need to look and see if they can use the whole property or just use the improved part of the property until all of it's improved. I don't know. I just do have a hard time with staging it for so long. So it's going to be 2006 before this thing is done.
2025.
2026, basic, or 25, I guess it is.
Yeah.
End of
No,
25.
you don't, you're the land use authority, so if you want something shortened or site plan approval, that's up to you. Mr. Clyde has the ability to request that from you, but the ordinance specifically says you have to approve it.
Well, in the first year, from what I understand, the first year is just the storm drains and that kind of thing. That's the only thing that will go in?
He just,
Well,
and the
it's actually
fence.
the most expensive part is year one.
Right.
So your neighbors will still be looking at the same thing 2 years from now?
Or you can deny it, they can still look at the same thing.
No, we can enforce you to improve it and follow the code requirements.
Well, didn't they say that the fence is gonna be part of phase 1 as well?
He's
We
gonna,
need to
that's
add that.
another condition,
We
yeah.
need to add that as a condition.
Okay.
Here's to clarify this, okay? The requirement based off the site plan, because the site plan's being approved, is only the fence between me and Betty Clark. That's the only requirement, because of the site plan. So the city, what I'm asking for, or what's happening here, is by you approving the site plan, we're talking about the time. The site plan is to fix the storm drain, curb and gutter, sidewalk, and anything that goes, and the landscaping back to 20 feet on 400 North. And then the part that connects next to Betty Clark's, because it's commercial property backing residential property. The site, the fence between 400 North and the rest doesn't have anything to do with this.
No, you're right.
That's just me doing that, because I want to be able to take that down, get everything lower, because we're tight. We're tight in there because the business is growing.
Okay.
So for me, to just even to phase it, is that there's no reason to just run that masonry wall on the east side 89 feet and end it. And that's why I want to talk to them about continuing, but I have retaining wall issues that I've got to dig out to retain and then put a masonry wall all between me and Betty.
You know, that masonry wall for the rest of that area, if you took that cost, you could do the rest of the improvements. Michael, is there a fence required behind the landscaping for a stock storage area?
If he's gonna have any storage, it's required.
Correct. But you're approving a site plan right now.
I understand,
Not the storage, right?
but you're not gonna be using it as a storage if we're only doing the site plan.
there's a phase through this, right? So I'm on the planning commission in Pleasant Grove, so that's why I understand this process really well. So each step has to go first. So I have to get the site plan approved before I can even do anything to put the fence in to actually do the storage.
Well,
So
I
it's
feel
one
like
step
that
at a
there
time.
needs to be a fence behind the landscaping to visually block,
There will be.
There will be.
Yeah.
but
There
not
will be.
until phase 3.
But no, you're approving it with the condition that it goes in with phase 1.
The fence, well, we were talking about the fence on the east side. What
No,
about
we're
the fence
talking
on the
about
north
both.
side?
We're talking about both.
Okay,
He's saying otherwise, he's saying.
yeah, he is.
It wasn't part of it, because it's only if I take the middle fence down and extend the yard over.
No, you're using that, you want to use that for
I
storage.
do wanna use it
And
for
so you
storage.
have to have the fence in, so that's
correct.
required. with the
And nothing
commission.
goes above the fence.
That's correct.
And isn't there already storage taking place? You indicated there was a few trailers and stuff like that.
That's not storage of fencing materials. That's not the stuff we're selling.
He's not.
So, Mike, as far as you understand, all of the verbiage is in place in the conditions, other than that condition of the phase 1, the fencing will be added as part of.
Yeah, I think that protects the
First
city. If you like the phasing plan that's in there, I think this is a good process moving forward, something the city can start to enforce.
Okay.
So we're saying we're gonna amend our motion to include a fence on the north side and the concrete wall on the east side.
Just as phase 1.
As part of.
It's already required on the east side,
Part of phase
as
1,
part of phase 1,
right.
that the fence along 400 Nuss should go in as well as part of phase 1 if there's going to be storage on that lot.
And that's fine, you can do that because that's my plan anyway.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear, as far as that fencing condition, and I know Mr. Clyde has plans to do that, but the condition would be the fencing will be added as part of phase 1, and then the fence on 400 North will also be put in place if there's going to be
As part
storage
of phase
on
1,
the-
if there's any.
As part of phase 1, not if there's going to be storage. Just part of phase 1.
Well, if there's not gonna be storage, he doesn't have to put a fence in,
He
so.
doesn't have to put it in at all. Is that right, Mike?
Correct, but
As far as on 400 North?
But,
The whole idea is to have storage area.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah, that's the whole plan, is to have
I would
storage.
just-
Right.
I would just do your motion with it.
Okay. Okay, is anyone willing to make that motion? Steve?
I feel like being an adjacent property owner, I probably
Okay.
shouldn't make the motion.
How about you, Rob?
you're gonna vote on it, you're probably okay.
What?
If you're voting on it, you're okay.
Okay.
Okay, Mike? Would you make it?
I can take a stab at it.
Okay.
I move to approve the applicant's request for site plan approval with the following conditions. 1, the applicant will continue to work with city engineer to make all corrections to the engineering documents. 2, the plans will meet development specifications as found in Lindon City Development Manual. 3, landscape plans will be met and meet the requirements of Lindon City, and a landscape plan be submitted to the city for final approval. 4, the proposed phasing plan be approved subject to all improvements being installed, inspected, and approved by Lindon City no later than December 31st, 2025. 5, the use as storage yard is connected as a business operation to fence specialists located at 360 North State Street, Suite A, and comply with Title 17.48.050, may not be sold or leased for a standalone storage facility. Number 6, the applicant will comply with all bonding requirements and will install all fencing as part of phase 1. Can I just include that in item 6?
You're fine.
And number 7, all items of the staff report.
Okay, do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed,
Okay,
with explanation that not opposed to the concept, just as the length of time that it's taking.
Okay. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate your comments. Appreciate your preparation for being here. Sir?
Can I ask one more question? Am I hearing you say that the fencing material that right now is several feet above his fence, that he'll take that all down and put it below his fence so it can't be seen from the highway? Is that what I heard you say tonight?
That's an enforcement issue.
What's that?
That's a city enforcement issue and needs to be done.
It's been 10 years he's been
Yep.
above his fence.
As we indicated, we just recently, Mike indicated, we just recently got a code enforcement officer in the city, so that's something you've got to work with them on.
So the mayor and those
If you'll-
people had no authority. I mean, I don't know why I spent my time with them. But I mean, it's glad. I'll get the code guy.
Mike, go ahead. Mike will
If
address
there's
that.
code enforcement issues, please contact the Community Development Department, and we will investigate those and send the proper noticing and enforcement.
Okay, great.
Okay. Thank you for being here with us. Okay, the next item on our agenda this is for item number 6, a site plan approval, and this is for the training room. And our applicant is the training room, or James Eager. Okay. And our presenting staff is Michael Florence.
Great. Thank you, Commissioners. Get to the right page on here. So Mr. Eager has applied for site plan approval for a private gym and some subsequent retail development that will go in along 700 North. Mr. Eager is purchasing the property on the furthest west lot. The commission recently subdivided this property into 3 4 to 5 acre lots a couple months ago. And so there is one mistake on this staff report. Well, there's probably multiple mistakes, but hopefully just one that I know of so far, that Mr. Eager is proposing a 50,700 square foot building. I put 5,700 square foot building on the report, so it's a 50,000 square foot building. The applicant currently operates a gym in American Fork, and is proposing to move that here to Lindon City. And so I'm going to go through this evening real quick the site plan requirements and the building elevations. So the surrounding properties you can see on the aerial photo here, to the north is Pleasant Grove. Their developers building a bunch of office warehouse to the north. The south property is currently vacant, same to the east, and then the west are a couple office buildings to the west. So we go to the site plan really quick on here. All right, so the building sits off of 700 North, approximately 106 feet. This is something the Planning Commission will need to give approval for. In the commercial design standards, it recommends 20 to 50 foot setbacks from the street with 1 row of parking. In discussions with the city council, with taller buildings, they would like to see a little bit further setback. So that setback, it just says in the commercial design standards that it's recommended. And so you can work with the applicant on the appropriate setback. On the parking, 75% of the parking is to the sides and rear of the building, and so 25% is in the front there with a 24-foot drive aisle. The applicant, when the subdivision was approved, there was cross-access easements for the 3 lots, or the 2 other lots to the east. And so it's envisioned that whatever you approve across the front here will continue with the other 2 properties to the east. Now, one thing we were made aware of just late, and we included this in the staff report, there is this rough East A subdivision to the west. They were required at that time to put a 24-foot easement in with an access out to 700 North. They also provided a cross-access easement themselves to connect to this development. And so what the ordinance says is the different districts are supposed to connect to each other. So that would be one of the requirements, that this developer connect to that rough subdivision to the west. And
They weren't aware of that, that's why it doesn't show that at this point?
that's correct.
Okay.
Yep, we were notified. I wasn't aware of it either until Friday afternoon. So we wrote it into the staff report, but it doesn't show it on here. As far as I am aware, the 2 property owners, or the developer and the property owner, the rough property owner, are working together, or have at least had some discussions. Going back to the parking, there's 206 parking stalls that are provided. The city code is 206 that's required. There's 219 on site. And the site planning sees undeveloped area in the back. Mr. Eager is proposing to have a second phase at a future time as part of this development. The bike stalls are installed, or bike parking is 16 required. That's provided here on the site plan on the corners of the building. ADA parking is 7 is required, and so that is also provided. The landscaping along 700 North. This shows our cross-section that's required for 700 North, so there'll be a 12-foot landscape easement and then 10-foot sidewalk. That sidewalk also acts as a trail or multi-purpose trail. And so the applicant is also proposing to have 8 feet of landscaping behind the sidewalk. That way he meets that 20-foot requirement along 700 North. The applicant is also required to have 20% of the site, the parking lot and site, into landscaping. He's proposing 25%. Let me pull these over real quick so you can see some of the renderings for the.
So the overall setbacks, what, 106 and a half?
What's that?
The total setbacks on this plan is 106 and a half?
Yes. I apologize, this is gonna kick me out of the YouTube stream if I redo this, but you can see the landscaping. The site will be well landscaped, both against the building and along the street, in the parking lot as well, and Mr. Eager can go through that additionally. Move this back over. Any questions so far on the site requirements? The pedestrian walkways are textured. I can show you, actually, I do have some of these. You can see some of the different landscaping on the buildings there, on the building. So Mr. Eager, I'll let him explain about the back too. He's got some great ideas for what he's proposing in the back portion of the site as well. Architectural requirements. So you can see on these renderings, we've been working with on the roof line. That's one of the, this would be the front of the building. This rendering here shows more just a straight flat cornice treatment. The rendering here, we've been trying to figure out how that roof line would work best on there. I'm not sure it's quite there yet, and I identified that in the staff report. It's a very repetitive nature, almost a little bit of an industrial look. But again, you are seeing a 2D image here. You're not looking at a 3D image like the previous on these plans here. The materials, there's a number of different materials. So this is the facade that you'd be looking at from State Street. There's 5 different materials. You've got a stone and brick veneer. You've got aluminum bond wall panel. You've got some corrugated architectural metal. You've got a wood and grain lap siding. So this is what you'd see from 700 North. There's canopies over most of the windows. The windows and doors the windows all go to the floor, which is a requirement that they either go to the ground or they put a wainscot in with a sill. This would be a canopy over this west elevation here. The east elevation also has a wraparound canopy. The colors are pretty all earth tone colors on there. This would be the east elevation. This is the training room entrance. On that east elevation, the front would have 3 different tenant entry doors. Those would be 3 different businesses that could go into the front along 700 North there. So this is the front elevation, this is the east elevation in the front of the training room facility. It's got a nice balcony area over on there. This is just something in the city code. It does require that your front entrance be the one with the most, your basically your most orientation, your best looking facade. And so that's, this is just personal. I've talked to this with James many times. I think the east elevation is actually the best looking, but that's just my personal preference. That's something you're going to have to review as well. Why I personally feel about that is the different sizes of the bays, the different, how tall the materials go on some of the bays as well. Then here's the west elevation and the north elevation. So this north would be the back of the building. Mr. Eager has been very generous in providing a lot of renderings, which I gave you a Google Drive link to. He's put a lot of money into those renderings. These are just a few of those. Let me make sure I went through everything. The building is 41 feet tall in height. The allowable height on that side of 700 North is 80 feet. So I think that pretty much covers a lot of the information from the commercial design standards. I think, just like I said, a couple of concerns from city staff was the roof line, what we've been working on, just making sure it doesn't have an industrial feel, that it has a true commercial feel along 700 North. So with that, we would be glad to answer any questions, and I can turn some time over to Mr. Eager.
I have a couple questions. On regard to the sidewalk, you're saying it's a textured sidewalk?
Just the crosswalks.
It's what?
Just the crosswalks.
Just the crosswalks. Okay, I was
Yes.
concerned when I heard sidewalks. I was wondering if that was something that the city was imposing on all of 700.
No, this little.
Make sure it was uniform.
Yeah, so the commercial design standards require that
Just
the
the crosswalks.
crosswalks,
Okay, I
so,
misunderstood, sorry.
yeah.
And second, does anybody else recall, not too long ago, Mr. Anderson was in, and he was also, the person who owns Anderson Farms, he was concerned about there's like a culvert or something that runs across the property. Is that on this property?
It is on this
Is that
property.
been dealt with?
Yeah, it'll go down through this east drive aisle.
Okay.
So that will be remained. And then this 20-foot area on the side here is a Pleasant Grove irrigation ditch. And so that will be maintained as well.
Okay, and then final question. I know in your renderings you're indicating a possible restaurant. Any idea on you're in your restaurant space?
Like what restaurant or which
Yeah,
space would?
I know what space. It's the southeast corner of the building. Do you have any, just curiosity's killing me. Do you have any idea
No.
what you're looking for?
I mean.
James, if you'll just pull that
You
little
okay,
closer.
you okay if I talk now?
I wasn't nervous until the last group went. So my wife had to leave the room because she couldn't handle contention. We have a lot of hopes for what we can put in there. I mean, one of the things that I talked to Mike about early on when I came in was, and I'm not trying to poke fun at the city, but when it listed off like nice restaurants, it listed off like Olive Garden. And I'm from Boston. I was like, yeah, it's not really what I think of when I think of nice restaurants. So we'd actually love to have the entire ground floor frontage be restaurants. It just depends on what tenants we can find to go in there. I mean, some thoughts that we had would be like a sushi place would be a nice place. We're not really, I mean, some of the people in my sphere of influence, like you really need to have a drive-through. Sorry, couldn't think of words for a second there, because it really increases the value of the property for restaurants that are leasing. We don't really want restaurants that want a drive-through. We'd much rather have restaurants that it's a come and sit down and you gather. And I'll talk about this when I talk about the landscaping, but I think we very much understand the city's desire to turn this commercial area, this whole 37 acres, into a place where people spend time. They're not just passing through and grabbing their coffee or their cookie and then they're out the door. And so that we've really tried to think about that for our uses. I mean, that, like, we want people to hang out and we wouldn't mind. I mean, people keep talking to us about different ideas all the time. Like, well, you have the gym, wouldn't you like a restaurant that actually does like really healthy meals? And my response is, sure, but have you eaten at most of those places? They're not usually very good. So if we find one that's, if we find one that tastes good, then we're totally game. But like, I mean, we want something that really works well, that people want to spend time at. So anyway.
Thank you. I hope this is a catalyst for 700 North. So thank you.
That's what we're hoping to.
Yeah. I think the biggest concern in discussing with the planning department is that roof line, and having that look, so it's more commercial rather than kind of that industrial look of the very flat roof lines without variation on that. What thought have you put into that?
We've tried a number of variations. We tried more height alterations. We tried actually some angulations, and every time it was kind of like, not really. Let's go back and see what we can do. The larger cornices on here that are different than what the 3D rendering shows, because the 3D rendering was actually put together by the landscape architect, so I wasn't going to make him go back and redraw the whole building. And so they don't show some of those changes, but those larger cornices were actually a detail that was shown on the back side of the building that Mike and Mary both liked, and so he said, well, yeah, we can move that over to the front. I guess the answer is we're not really sure what to do about that. Talking about the 4 different bays there, so the first, if you're going from the left, the first 2 doorways are going to be tenant spaces, and then the 3rd doorway is actually a common area entrance, and then the 4th on the right, that would be the last tenant space. I don't know. I mean, I'd like to tell you I have all the answers for how to change that look. You know, one of the, I guess the arguments that I make in favor of it is when you look at it with the landscaping, it really does change that. I mean, I get it, it's a big box, and there's only so much we can do to make a big box not look like a big box. We've tried to do these 4-foot pop-outs to really add some different elements. We've tried to add all these different masonry details and variations there, but I get it. I get the argument that it's somewhat repetitive. I'm just not sure that I have a good solution. I mean, Mike and I have had a lot of back and forth, and you know, sometimes I come up with ideas. He's like, "Well, that doesn't necessarily meet the code." So I don't know. Is Brandon here? Oh, there you are. He's stuck in on the other side. So he's our architect. So he may want to speak to some of this at some point. But yeah, I mean, we get it. We want it to be a really, really good looking building. And one of the hopes is that the landscaping will help break up a lot of those lines so that it's kind of a softer building. my wife and I were driving around last night and talking about this, and, you know, there's all sorts of warehouse space going up in different areas, especially along Geneva Road. And they're good-looking buildings, but they look like warehouse space.
Right.
And one of the big differences that I point out is you look at those, and it's a big flat wall with tiny little 4 to 8 inch pop-outs and no landscaping to get excited about. And I really think that even when you have a large structure like this, when you landscape it and you break those lines up with some nice vertical greenery and other colors, it does change it. And that's kind of what I'm hoping, is that based on, you know, meeting the design standards, but knowing that there's some concerns there, that the landscape will help kind of soften that building, so.
Okay, and as far as your architect, would you like to come up with him?
And maybe the architect can talk,
Yeah, if you want, yeah.
Brandon.
address one other item I failed to mention in the report. The ordinance requires that you be able to tell on the exterior elevation the difference between the first and second stories, whether that's a, you know, architectural element, and you can, you know, that kind of shows a little bit with this not balcony, but roof line here, with the little porch area. But it does require that you have some breakup between the first and second stories. And so that's something we probably need to work on as well.
Why is that?
I think to provide some variation between the first and second floors.
Can that be done by
Can be done by
window height?
window height, it could be done by material, it could be done by a break-in facade treatment.
Right.
It could be something, it doesn't have to be extensive, it's just a breakup between the first and second stories, so.
I think the windows achieve that.
I don't think they do, so.
Okay. I guess we'd like, where you're the architect.
My name is
we'd like
Brandon
to-
Lundin with Diversified Design Services, and yeah, this is like version 28 point something. I mean,
That's okay.
we've been going back and forth and back and
Yeah.
forth on this.
Yeah,
An issue we run into a lot of places is they don't want big flat planes of wall. They don't want that. And they don't want
Flat
one
roofs.
solid level roof. So what we've done with this, and he's right, this 2D drawing doesn't show very well, but each one of those pop-outs where you see a different change in elevation height is 4 feet. It's not 8 inches or 1 foot like you see in a lot of places. It's 4 feet.
Yeah.
So this building has a lot of depth as it goes around there. And going back to the roof line, which seems to be the biggest concern, is we've gone from straight roofs with different height elevations to, at one point we had one like 4 foot with like 2 foot of slope in it. And they said, nah, let's come back with something different. So we've changed this roof a lot. So I'm almost a little bit confused on what we want right now. Because I get a look at some of the pictures I'm seeing, I'm like, okay, there's only like an 8-inch difference in height there. I'd rather see a different change in height, a couple feet, just so it doesn't look like it's a square box. That's my job, is trying to make a square box look good. And I thought we got it with the 4 foot changes, which I know a lot of cities would be happy to have. But at this point, I'm open to suggestions because I'm not exactly sure. We put the cornices. I don't necessarily like the cornices on all of them. I could see the cornice, build out cornice at a 45-degree angle on maybe the higher ones, and on the other ones go flat, or maybe do something a little different at the bottom. I'm open to anything. I've seen numerous pictures and stuff. We have numerous materials, and these are high-end materials. We've got a Luca bond like you'd find on the higher-end car dealerships. We've got stone veneer. There's a lot of white stone veneer on here. We've got masonry. We've got the wood, the cedar lap. So, like I said, I'm open to it. We're trying to make this as attractive as possible. James, he's gone out of his way to try to make this thing as beautiful as possible for this area because we do want to set a precedence. We want it to look nice there. But
the roof lines match my buildings next door. This is what my roof lines look like. I mean, I'm the 2 buildings next
Sir,
door.
what is your name?
Steve Roof.
I think you've done a good job
So
there.
I think it looks great.
And the elevation changes are good. Maybe there's just too many elements or something. It seems so chopped up,
yeah.
Is it too busy? Is that what you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, perhaps, but I do
We're
like
trying,
that
if we want to dumb it down, I can dumb it down too. I
No,
mean,
I like it.
just
I
seems
like
we
it
call
like
it
it
dumb
is.
it down.
yeah,
No.
but just not so many variations,
correct. Yeah, honestly, there's only 2 elevations. Well, excuse me, there might be 3. I think we've made where the restaurant is the highest point.
Then I believe I'm 8 inches lower to the 3 higher ones, and then the other ones are all the same height. Those 4 are the same height.
You've got a building that looks like 8 different buildings. That's squished together, you know?
So could it look like 4?
What's that?
Could it look like 4 buildings?
4 or
Instead of,
6.
We could.
But the city's been, I mean, we've been asking for.
Variations.
well, yeah, but it doesn't have to be overly variated, which I think it does look a little busy. I mean, the buildings where everything's trying to look like a townhouse or like, I don't,
I think
one
that
thing,
part
though-
looks really nice. It's just the flat roof line.
But I
Is-
am
okay,
looking,
my question is it too flat or needs to be flatter? That's my question. I can make it flatter.
You mean,
I think it
so
is.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
what
Mike.
do you mean flat?
So this is just, I agree, with the roof line, it's just, you've got 4, basically the same cornices at the top. I think you can work on that to make it a little simpler even. If you look at let's see, I'm trying to look at one of the other elevations.
And I am not an architect, so I don't even pretend
No,
to be.
but you guys have a look you're looking
No,
for
it-
here. And I've looked at a lot of your buildings in town. They're very nice.
Even this rear elevation, it's a little simpler.
Yeah.
So that was some of my comments, was making that a little bit simpler even on the roof line. Let me read that code to you regarding the differentiating. It says, differentiate between the ground floor and the upper floors by providing for depth and variation in a facade through the use of different colors, materials, or other details. And so there should be a little bit of a differentiate between the first floor and the second floor for our commercial design standards.
So does this currently meet the design standards like it sits? Are we just saying, oh, we just don't like the way it looks, but yes, it complies?
No, I addressed that in your staff report, that I didn't think that it didn't necessarily differentiate between the first and second floors.
Oh, just on that issue. I'm saying how it's broke up, is that, I mean, that's something we're just looking at.
The 4 foot, yes, it says every 15 to 20 feet, you have to have a change in variation. Yes, that meets the requirement.
Meets the requirement as it stands. So the only thing that's not within requirements right now would be the separation, which could be an architectural beam or something separating the floors.
Yes, it could,
Second
or it
stories.
could be materials. It could, there's a number of different options.
Just something cosmetic on the exterior.
That is correct.
What if we simply took some of the brick and some of the masonry we have on that sides and just took it up to the floor level? And then that would create a definition of where first and second floor. Would that work for you guys? Because that would be simple enough.
yeah, something simple like
We could just raise that up. I won't vary those heights, but yeah, it would differentiate those two. And then as far as the roof lines go, I can maintain the 3 higher cornices, but the ones in between, we could go just to a simple, like a staggered cedar board or something on there. Just put a little bit of depth to it, but just make it flat.
Like the ones with the wood grain, if you look at this rendering here, that's really how it comes straight out between the 2 bays. That's really, I
Yeah.
really like that. And so I think,
it differentiates it.
so as a condition of approval, I made that we'll continue to just work that out as city staff and the applicant.
Okay,
That shouldn't be a problem to do that.
so, but they still need to add the breakup between the first and second stories, though.
Yeah, and they could do that by the materials, depending if maybe that looks too heavy, they can play around with that a little bit and we can work that out.
So the things that we're still lacking on this could be worked out with staff?
Yes, yeah, we made it, just number 3, the final design will meet the commercial design standards for commercial and site buildings, particularly regarding the roof line and differentiating between the ground floor and upper floor, and ensuring that the greatest consideration in terms of design emphasis and detailing to the street facing facade. So I think with the roof line and that differentiating will be there.
Okay. So, and staff will follow up on that part,
That's correct.
okay? Are there other concerns from the commission?
No, I was gonna say, I really liked looking at the one with all the landscaping. There's quite a bit of landscaping up next to the building and stuff, which I think really helps differentiate it and make it, of course, that could die. I mean, it's, or it doesn't grow, I mean, but, I think it's a,
And James maybe you could talk about what you're thinking, that he's got some awesome plans.
I mean, I look at the plan and I'm like, wow, that's a nice looking building.
We've been long, so I'll try to keep it brief, but the landscaping, originally, the landscape architect, I said, before you start drawing, talk to me, because I have some thoughts. And 2 weeks later, he sent me the plans, and I called him, I said, we didn't talk. And so he had kind of drawn what I would call a vanilla plan. It meets the minimum standards. It's kind of like, this is what's in there. And one of the things that you'll see on the staff report is some of the tree varieties are not approved tree varieties because it's not, as I call it, that vanilla plan. And what I talked to them about was we wanted to do a landscape plan that really showcases native plants, edible types of plants, things that you wouldn't expect to grow here, but actually grow really well. So I actually have a pretty extensive yard at my house that I spend a lot of time researching things. I like to grow a lot of edible foods, and it's fun. And there's pretty amazing things out there. What's also great about it is that we're trying to do things, not true xeriscaping, but minimal water use. So we've basically eliminated turf grasses because they serve largely no purpose except for to suck up water and create a lot of weekly maintenance for us. On the west side of the property next to the ditch, there's basically a riparian or a river-based landscaping, so it's designed to take use of those natural elements. The edible landscaping is more on the backside. In fact, the landscaper is going to work with us to basically put plaques on all those, so as people are kind of wandering around, it's like, well, what is this? I've never seen this. And so you might, if you went through, and it's a long landscaping plan, you discover there's something called a maypop that shows up in different areas. And a maypop is actually a North American native passion fruit vine. And it actually bears fruit with these huge purple blossoms. And it does well in Utah. And it doesn't require a lot of water, interestingly enough. And it goes dormant in the winter. In the southeastern United States, it's actually invasive because it just doesn't get shut down by the cold. But here it'll actually stay in its location and provide food. There's things like service berries, which are a native plant that produces berries sort of like unto a blueberry. But yeah, and it's things like that that are not approved. But they actually work well. In fact, the landscape architect, when we had our meeting and I went over these thoughts, like, oh, this is actually an exciting project. We just thought you wanted what every other commercial developer wants and just to knock it out for cheap. On the east side of the property, we have this kind of meandering walkway, which is a different texture with benches and potentially even fire pits. And then there's some gathering spaces with pavilions. In closer to the building, we have seating areas that will be for the restaurants and stuff. I mean, we want people to hang out here, and we want them to go and explore, and maybe they take this and go, hey, I wish I was growing this in my yard. And I actually would argue that when developing commercially, especially with the issues we're having with water in Utah, we should be looking at designs like this because there's no reason to put in huge square footage of turf grass when we could be turning around and growing things that actually provide better air quality and even food. My wife wanted me to point out, like, if you're worried about the mess from food, don't worry, we'll harvest it, and anything that we don't use and our tenants and our clients don't use, we can always donate to people, so.
Well, in the staff report, the only thing that is a big concern is just the tree species that has been, whether that's been approved by our tree committee or not.
The trees along 700 North, we have a specific standard that was
Right.
adopted years ago, and
Right.
I'm not sure we communicated that well enough beforehand, and so we'll make sure those are in.
Yeah, but there is quite a few they can select from, or not?
Not
I don't know.
not on 700 North.
They put a uniform, kind of, so that
Yes.
everybody on frontage would be,
Well, on the frontage,
yeah,
right.
that's what he's talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay.
we have and we're glad to work with him on
On the
there's
plants
there's
and
the
things
certain
like that.
trees that are required, and there's
Right.
flexibility in others, and we're glad to work on those. It just, sometimes it depends on the placement of where that tree is.
Well, and you don't want just a mix of hodgepodge of trees.
Yeah.
I appreciate not the vanilla landscaping. I mean, your building is the first one coming into our 700 North corridor. So to have some horticultural sophistication, I love that idea. And that you will have some plants of interest and maybe encourage people to buy, to see plants thriving that are very water-wise. And I don't like seeing rock everywhere. I mean, we need plants, we need flowers for the bees. To go xeriscape, that's not helpful either. So we have to be very thoughtful about how that goes. But I think I like your idea of making it a place of interest where people will come and hang out, and it will showcase as people come into Lindon. I'd like that.
One thing I
Thank
do have
you.
to say about James with this project has been nice. I do hundreds of thousands of square feet of office warehouse a year. And typically it's always do the bare minimum. That's what they want, not him. Every time I turn around, he's like, well, we want to do this, we want to make the landscaping this, we want to make the building this, we want to make it. He's really making an effort to make it a showpiece.
Yeah.
So I
Great.
hope you consider that, because it's going to be a good first step for people coming into the city. I really think that.
Great. But as far as the trees, so there probably will be a certain, there will be a certain type. that
Just for
you'll probably have to go
700
with.
North, I mean,
I didn't realize that. I thought the landscape architect had matched that, because that row is supposed to be different. It's supposed to match that standard, whereas the rest of the property, and maybe they decided to go a little bit rogue when I gave them some freedom, and we can make that change. That's easy. So.
Okay, okay. Are we ready for a motion on this? Are there other
Can I make a
questions?
quick comment? You haven't asked for
Sure,
comments.
Give us your name one more time.
So Steve Roof, I own the properties to the west, both properties.
Okay.
so what are the names?
Yep.
Is it blank, or do you have
No, I have
commercial?
two buildings.
What are they called?
So cost segregation
Okay.
authorities in the back, Taylor MRI,
Mm-hmm,
Lion Homes,
Right.
Allstate are in my front building.
helpful, thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, so I'm gonna look at this building more than all of you, and because my office looks right out at it, and I really like it, so. But the only thing I wanna make sure is, and I haven't read the motion, is just to make sure that I get my access easement. And Mr. Eager and I've talked, I just wanna make sure that is included, as part of that.
And our civil engineer is actually redrafting that change right now. So with the additional red line comments already made on the initial site plan, he's making that change. That was all news to us this last week, and we just didn't have time to get it ready for tonight, but we'll have it ready shortly, so.
And I appreciate
Thank you.
everybody working with me on that. We're very excited for access to 700 right
Well,
there.
exactly.
Very
Yeah.
much, especially the MRI doc that has his patients. He's more excited than anybody.
That does seem, isn't that, item number 4?
Yeah,
Right, the cross
Is the
easement.
motion where it's.
That's
Yeah,
the
there's
cross-access
cross
easement right
access.
there,
So,
yeah.
so it is included.
Mr. Eager, could you just explain your model for operation of the training room? Is it a 24-hour or is it?
No, not at all. And it would probably take longer than we want to spend tonight to really talk about it in detail. It is a much higher end gym or fitness center. In fact, technically, we're not even a fitness center. If you look at our legal classification with the federal government, we are an outpatient care facility that happens to have a fitness center attached. We do operate fairly long hours, like we open at 5 a.m. and we close at 10 p.m. Monday through Friday. Friday it's a little bit earlier, Saturday shorter hours, and closed on Sunday. So we offer, that's actually what I do is sports medicine. So we have about 1,000 square foot clinic currently. That'll stay about the same size within the space. We're also looking at bringing in cold pools and hot saunas and things like that. It's, I think everything that Vasa is not is what we are. Like where they want 5 parking spots for everyone they're allotted, we'd rather have 1 for every 5. And you can go see actually our property in American Fork. We have this sea of parking spaces in front of our building, and at most we might use 70 spaces. And that's with 600 members. You know, the average Vasa has 10 to 15,000 members, and we'd love to see it double when we move over here. We're including things like pickleball and stuff. So it's really a much higher end fitness center and much lower volume of traffic than most of the ones you'll see, and we like it that way.
Where's your training room located in American Fork?
It's off the 500 East exit in American Forks, so really just, I gotta reorient my brain just a minute.
By the DI?
Old Walmart.
It is the old Walmart building, so
Okay.
just down the road
Yeah.
from the DI there. I mean, it's kind of in the crook of the exit ramp, so you'd almost not see it as you go by. That's one of the things we're really excited about moving here is people all the time will ask, well, how come we've never heard of you? And we've been there for almost 5 years, because you just drive right by it and you don't see it. This gives us a lot more visibility. I mean, that's the only thing holding us back in a lot of ways. You can go look at our Google reviews. We've got almost 300 reviews with an average of 4.9 stars.
That's great.
And we'd have probably closer to 400, except Google deletes a certain percentage of our reviews because they're all left from within the building. And I don't know what to do about that, but it is what it is. So
On the site plan, and maybe this will be addressed, but did I miss, but I didn't see any lighting.
Yeah, so I reached out to the engineer this week, and he let me know that most of the lighting will be off of the building, but they will be considering some parking lot lighting as well.
We do have a photometric plan going together right now. I just didn't have it quite done.
And can the lighting be approved by staff
Yes.
according to ordinance?
Yes.
That doesn't have to go through us?
No, it'll need to
Okay.
be some type of upgraded lighting, at least
Right.
along
Well,
the
it's-
main
right.
facade, but yeah, staff can approve those.
Well, to me, it sounds like anything else, any other adjustments or anything else that needs to be approved can be done by staff.
Yeah.
You know, everything else, it's just whether it meets the ordinance or not. With us, is there anything else? Any other thoughts you have? Okay, go ahead.
I move to approve the applicant's request for site plan approval with the following conditions. The applicant will continue to work with city engineer to make all final corrections to the engineering documents. The plan will meet development specifications as found in the Lindon City Development Manual. Final design will meet the commercial design standards for commercial buildings, commercial sites and buildings, particularly regarding the roof line, differentiating between the ground floor and the upper floor, and ensuring that the greatest consideration in terms of design emphasis and detailing to the street-facing facade. A cross-access easement will be recorded on the west property line in a 24-foot vehicle access be installed to connect the train room development with 1810 West, 700 North. Landscaping plans will be met and meet the requirements of Lindon City. The site plan is approved with a front setback of 106 feet. The proposed design with 2 rows of parking is approved. The applicant will comply with all bonding requirements if applicable, and item 9, all items of the staff report.
I second that motion.
You have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous.
Thank you.
When do you plan to actually start construction, or?
Oh, hopefully I don't scare Mike again when I say things like this. I really would like to be breaking ground by March. I know that the timeline is tight. We've got to get engineering finished, reviewed, and approved, but we're pushing hard for this, so.
So you can have it going for the summer?
That's, well, probably not that fast.
Building
Marty
on-
might have
building
a
on
heart
it.
attack if I said 3 months.
September,
to-
October.
Yeah, probably late in the year is what
But
we're
I
looking
mean,
at.
you're
Yeah, end of 2023
starting
is what
some
we're
of the
hoping for, so,
infrastructure or something, huh?
yeah.
Is
So,
it a membership type of facility?
It is, yeah. You guys are
Well,
all
thank you
welcome. If
so
you wanna have a
much.
longer discussion about that stuff, you're welcome to stop by at any time and we can tell you all about it, so. yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
looking forward to it and excited. Yep, I'm getting there. Just a second. Through this. All these renderings. Okay. Okay, the next item on our agenda is actually a public hearing, because there is a zone change involved. And so I do need a motion to open a public hearing.
I move that we open a public hearing.
I second that.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. And our applicant is Ryan Litke. Are you here this evening? Would you like to come up?
Sure.
Okay. And there should be a place for you to sign in, and Mary Barnes will be our presenting staff.
Yes, thank you. All right, this item, as Sharon mentioned, is 3 separate applications: minor subdivision, site plan, and zone change. So I'm going to go through each of them separately. But first, you have seen, I'm sure you remember very well, applications for this parcel in the past. There was a 45 storage unit development in 2016 that was approved, and then, nothing ended up happening. Then just last year, 75 storage unit development was approved. Nothing ended up happening. The property ended up changing hands to Skyline Holdings, and now we have this new project with 2 warehouses instead of storage units. So with the minor subdivision, a requirement for any project on this parcel has been to put in a minor subdivision. To apply for a minor subdivision and clean up the existing parcel lines. As you can see with the parcel map right now, there's, parcel lines are all over the place there. I believe the previous property owners bought or subdivided this parcel in the front, or lot 1 on the proposed subdivision plat, and they ended up subdividing it with a deed instead of a subdivision plat, and that created some remainder parcel lines. It's just a bit messy, so this minor subdivision has been required to clean up both lot 1, that residential lot, and also lot 2. And this minor subdivision, for the minor subdivision and the site plan, I added a condition to both of those motions that these are conditioned on the zone change, because this subdivision, it includes the area that would be required to have a zone change before it could be subdivided for an industrial property. Anyways, and one other thing about lot 1 is that this front section, this area, will be rededicated to Lindon City as right-of-way, as you can see in the parcel map. This residential property has about 4,000 square feet. Their property line goes to the middle of 800 West, so essentially we'd just be dedicating that 800 West property to the city as right-of-way. And the engineers have said that they're not going to require curb and gutter to be put along 800 West at this time, because no other surrounding properties have that curb and gutter. They don't want to create some type of drainage issue for the adjoining properties. So lot 1 does meet all residential lot requirements with size, frontage, width, depth. Lot 2, the industrial lot, it does meet the size requirement, but it does not meet the frontage requirement. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this. You just heard this last year, but there is a 60-foot wide access easement through this J.C. Olson Ventures 850 West 200 South property that allows access into this lot 2. Plus there is, I put it in here, this Robert Nielsen's easement that has been recorded on the Nielsen property, which is at 136 South 800 West. I'll point it out right here. So this right here will be, let me see, a 20-foot wide emergency fire access easement. It would only be for emergency vehicles only. Again, you've probably heard this quite a few times, but that easement has been recorded. With that fire access easement and with the 60-foot wide access easement through the business to the south, frontage requirements, and the frontage requirement is essentially it's met with those access easements. Do you have any questions on that minor subdivision before I move on?
So the access to this will be from the south
Mm-hmm.
through the parking lot.
Yes, and I believe you'll be improving the parking lot, right?
Yeah, we're gonna have to cut that up pretty good. He's gonna get new asphalt all the way out to the road, but yeah, that's the way it's designed. It's not ideal, but that's the way it was done before we ended up.
How wide is it?
60 feet.
60 feet, yeah.
Didn't we kind of go through that
Yeah.
before with the
Yeah.
other development, that easement would be used?
Uh-huh. Yeah, so that easement was originally approved, well, you guys remember this, but I'll just say it for the record, it was originally approved to be an access for the property in 2016 with that first storage unit development.
But in 2019, I think we went through that also.
Yeah, and then it came back for a zone change. Anyways, it's just been a long process, but
Mr. Olson was here when we did it, who had to grant that, so it should be taken care of.
He's aware of this. We've talked multiple times.
all right. Well, moving on to the site plan, the applicant is proposing 2 warehouses. One is, I call this building 1 is 55,000 square feet, and then building 2 is about 13,000 square feet. Both buildings about 30 feet tall, and that meets the height requirements in this light industrial zone. As you can see with the parking tabulation, it's just on the side here. It's also in your staff reports. They've kind of passed out the warehouse area and the office area to ensure there's enough stalls for both buildings. Total parking stalls required, factoring in the warehouse and office area is 97. The total parking stalls provided, including the ADA parking stalls, 114. So they have also provided all necessary ADA stalls. So the applicant has met all parking requirements. Traffic circulation, I mentioned already the access easements. The city engineers have looked at these radiuses as well around the building to ensure that they make sense for, the trucks that'll come and empty out the dumpsters, and also trucks that'll serve the businesses in this area. Now, landscaping. So the landscaping standards, well, there's practically no landscaping standards for industrial areas unless you're next to a road, which this isn't. However, there are interior parking landscaping standards. So 40 square feet of landscaping is required for every parking stall, so 114 parking stalls means about 4,000 square feet total required. They do have 10,000 square feet, so they beyond meet that requirement. 76% of that landscaping area will be living vegetation, such as trees and grasses, water-wise vegetation, and that meets the 75% living vegetation requirement. However, one of these requirements is that when abutting a residential use, let me scroll to the area, there must be a 10-foot buffer of landscaping with trees planted every 10 feet. So there's this little section right here where this is the Nielsen property, and there's that fire access easement up to 800 West. There's this section here where there's not quite 10 feet. I think in the staff report I said it's about 6 to 2 feet in that area. So there is a section of the code, let's see, 17.18.85, where it says that the Planning Commission may grant an exception to this landscape standard within the industrial area if existing vegetation or other existing screening is found to meet the intent of the screening requirements. So in your staff report, I mentioned the retaining wall. As you can see, there's blocks right here, plus the required 7-foot wall would meet that screening, the intent of the screening. But Ryan, how tall will that retaining wall be? Right here.
I don't have the specs right in front of me, obviously, but it's pretty tall. But you've got to understand, you've got to add an masonry fence on top of that.
Exactly,
so
that's what I'm saying.
This is going to look a lot bigger at ground level from the building side. From the residential side, it's gonna be pretty significant as well. But I should note, earlier tonight, you guys were talking about masonry fences. They only come in 6 or 8 foot, so you can't do a 7. So you're getting an 8 there as well.
A minimum of 7.
Yeah, but it'll be an 8, but it's gonna block things. So when we talk about this exception right there, we're trying to keep the property lines kind of funky the way it's riding through there, right? And so I look at this and I'm saying, well, even if we have landscaping there, no one's going to see it except for us. So when I put the blocks and everything, we get them all done, then we put the fence on top of that, it's gonna look identical regardless from the residential side, because it is significant from where they're at looking down. But anyway, so it makes the most sense right there, the way we dealt with that property line. And that's why we bought that piece from Mr. Nilsson, was to clean that up, because we had these weird jogs and all kinds of weird stuff going on back there. We're just trying to make it as square as possible.
Awesome. Yeah, so I included that as a condition as well, but I'll just finish this and you can ask questions if needed. So lighting on the site. All lighting will be on the building, and it will be, you can see it. Oh, this is great. Okay. You can see it kind of right here. They're small black lights. With all the lighting is, directed downwards. It's not going to be flooding the surrounding residential properties. There won't be any actual parking lot lighting. It will all be from the building. The building does exceed the architectural standards of the industrial zone. They provide, so much of the split face block, which like I said, just exceeds that requirement. And a 40-foot setback has been provided around this. This is the only building abutting residential areas. So around this building, at least 40 feet is between it and the residential use or zone. Any questions on that site plan?
Anyone from commission?
Nope, straightforward.
Do we have residents here that are here to make comment, or?
I just have one question.
Okay.
Jody Olson.
Can you, go ahead.
How many potential businesses are gonna be in this development?
That building in the middle shows 8 units. The other one over on the other side shows 4. My experience, we've built multiple of these buildings inside Lindon. We actually really like Lindon City. It's been great. It kind of depends. Each tenant is different. Mastercraft Boats has actually reached out, and they're talking about maybe taking that whole building as indoor boat storage. So it could be one tenant. We like to condoize these buildings, so it gives us a little flexibility with the tenants. My experience with other buildings like this, right now I've got tenants in a building like that. I range from anywhere, obviously, all the way up to 8, but usually we end up with probably about half that. A lot of tenants will take multiple space. But it's hard to say. I mean, each tenant is different. Their needs are different, but these are, yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah, the main reason I'm asking, just the concern of the amount of traffic.
For sure.
It's going through that parking lot.
It's been a concern of ours from the very beginning.
Storage units, you would.
If I could build a road right there and go in and figure it out, it would have made it ideal. But I think the way we've designed this, we're gonna try to paint some lines through there, make it look. We'll work with the property owner there to make it look like it's flows in, flows out without any issues. But it's not the most ideal for sure. But it kind of is what it is. So. If you want to see a really good rendition of this building, it's very similar to the one, and I don't know the address of that. Mike, do you know the address of that one we built over there by the dump?
I don't. We can pull it up really quick though.
Sorry.
That's what I wondered. What are some of the other buildings you've built?
You're about to see one. That one is very similar to this one. We built a couple up on 200 South as well. That was years ago, and then
We've got 4 that we built over on 7th South and Pleasant Grove. So just above this project you just talked about with the training room. If you want to drive by those are somewhat similar, but
Is this the one right here?
right there on the corner. Yep. Not that one.
Just moving around.
But I think it's across the street. Oh, there it is, before it got built. The pool cover, Aaron Birmingham bought that building from us. He occupies it now, but you could drive by that one. It turned out really nice. It's probably one of our best.
Very similar to Joe Pilling's building.
Yeah, the Pillings, Cowie guys, they've done some similar ones. We work together on some of this stuff, but I think this is a better use back there than the storage unit option. The storage unit option was causing some problems. I think it's somewhat secluded back there, and so I have a hard time with the landscape requirements. I know on this other project you were just talking about, landscape is important. I have tons of heartache about planning all this stuff that nobody's really going to see, and us consuming a ton of water in a place like this, but it is what it is. But I think having people coming in and out of here and stuff and being a little more exposed is actually going to be a better thing than storage units. A lot of stuff could be going on back there, I think, without lighting and things. It could cause some problems. I'm not saying this couldn't be an issue back there as well, but I think with the lighting and the buildings and the style that we're doing, gives us the capability to put some cameras on the exterior of these buildings. When people are coming and going, we can see what's going on. So I think it's a better use back there all the way around. I think it's going to turn out good.
Definitely a safer bet.
I think so. And we've had, like I said, we've had really good success with all the tenants. I think we do a good job of screening them. It's not your typical industrial use. I mean, we've got people from screen printers and, things that you don't feel like you're going to see. I don't have a cabinet guy, and I don't have guys that are doing, a lot of noise, stuff like that. This doesn't work that way because we don't allow yard space outside. So that's another benefit, is you're not having a bunch of stuff that you're dealing with maybe some of the issues you had tonight with the outdoor storage stuff in some of those areas. So I think this will look really good.
So
it's not ideal, but it'll look good.
Everything's indoor and self-contained?
Everything, the way we CCNR these is we don't allow anything crazy going on in the parking lot and stuff as far as exterior parking, trailers, boats, stuff like that. We don't want any of that. It just causes us problems as well. So.
Just to be clear, you're not condominiumizing these?
Said they would like to.
Well, at some point I'm going to come back, maybe.
At some point, but that's not.
We're not doing that right now, but typical is we'd come back and run it back through with a condo plat. But I'm planning on keeping all this stuff, so I don't really need to condoize it. But sometimes it makes it nice in the future if we want to sell one unit at a time or something.
But he would be required to come back to the
Right.
commission to be able to do
Do a
that?
condo plat for that.
Okay.
We know the procedure. We've done it a couple of times with you. So.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, one last thing, zone change. So fairly basic. So this is about 1.166 acres or 7,229 square feet, I believe. This piece of land back here, it's currently zoned R120. The applicant has purchased it from Robert Nilsson, who lives in this home, and he's applying to have that zone changed to light industrial. If it's changed,
Network status.
all good. If it's changed to light industrial, then this minor subdivision and the site plan could work. Like the applicant said, he's requesting this zone change.
Access button.
It's all good, really. Anyways, the applicant got this piece of land so it doesn't jog out weirdly, right?
Yeah, we're just trying to clean up those straight lines back there.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it wasn't perfect, but it's a lot better than it was before.
Yeah. So this is what it's a messy go of it, but it would look like that with all the parcels cleaned up, just rezoned to light industrial. In the general plan, this is technically designated as residential low, seen right here, but there's as you all know, there's an upcoming general plan update where we can make a note of that and make a change in the general plan to put that in the mixed commercial, this like pink designation. And this piece of land would be meeting the mixed commercial and the light industrial. The mixed commercial was with the general plan, it should be clear. The light industrial is with the zoning plan. It would meet the intent of those two designations. Also, with the approval of the minor subdivision and with the city council approval for the zone change, this lot will meet minimum light industrial lot size. Right now, it doesn't meet residential lot size either, so it's just some non-conforming lot. So really, it's just like Ryan said, cleaning everything up. So just to finish out, public hearing notices were sent out about 11 days ago. We actually haven't heard any public, comments on that. No one has called in. Obviously, there are people here, but we do believe that this project, like Ryan was saying, will benefit Lindon City. It will put investment into this otherwise empty and hard to develop piece of land, provide employment for people, and clean up the space, clean up the lot lines. And yeah. Any other questions about that zone change?
Not as far as on the zone change, because it is just for that one little parcel.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to go ahead with the actions on this item, we can do all three actions at the same time, can't we?
Yes,
Okay.
well, it would be a recommendation for the zone change, but yeah, I put all three motions in.
Three separate motions.
Oh, yeah, three separate motions.
Three
but we can
separate
do 'em.
motions.
Okay. And because it is a public hearing, before we close the public hearing, is there anyone else here that had comment? Go ahead. And your name?
I'm Diane Campbell.
Uh-huh.
I own the property to the north. And I just have questions because I don't understand the property. You said that there was some easement given to the city for my next door neighbors. Why would they do that?
Oh,
Are we talking
They
about
were
the,
paying taxes out to the middle of the road that they didn't really have a,
But I am.
no, I don't know if you are or not. Could you pull?
are you talking about the Kings? Is that right, Mike?
Yeah.
So
But
maybe I
what
can
do
answer
with
this. Maybe I can answer this. This wasn't part of what we did, but the guys that owned this before, it's me.
Oh, okay.
The guys that owned this before, when they bought this land, from what I understand, Mike, they subdivided this without your guys' approval. Is that right? So they made a mistake. They just didn't do it right. So what we're doing right now is that dedication up front, and my guess is you guys would probably have everybody else do the same dedication if they were to change their property at some point, right? Just looks like an overlap, but we're doing it for the Kings because they're part of this plat that's going to be recorded because this was part of what was bought before. So they're being forced to just dedicate that section, but they don't own it anyway.
So they're being
We're
forced
forcing
to
Ryan.
dedicate it?
To clean it up because it's part of the subdivision.
You technically already approved this
Yeah,
once.
we did, yep, right.
Your property and their property goes to the center of the road. It's not really yours property. So
Mike,
give
do
it
you
back
want
to
to
the city.
help explain that to her?
Get that fixed too?
Yeah.
Or what?
Well, it looks like there's even further north, Mike.
It's like, what about all the adjacent?
Does that make
Sense though? That's the only reason why it's happening on the Kings is because it was part of this before.
Okay, and I came to the meetings before, and I never caught that, so.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a little confusing, but it's a formality for the Kings because they're involved with some of the stuff that happened before. But if you were to do something, I think with your property, they would probably make you redo that as well at some point.
Okay, so then, my other question is the access that Bob Nelson,
Mm-hmm.
enabled, is that gonna be
It's
only for fire trucks?
It's only fire access because we couldn't meet the fire guidelines because of the depth of the building from the road. So there's a stop gate there at the bottom, only the fire department can get through. You won't even notice that's even probably there because there won't be any signs up on the road. The only people that will know about that is the fire department in case of a fire, and they'll be the only one that has a key to get through the gate.
Okay, so.
It'll have a knock box on it, so we can't use it either. I would have loved to have used it, but that's not the option.
And I'm just curious. These
So
are
it's
questions.
just strictly a fire access in case there's a problem. The fire department can come
So there's
in.
one access, and that's.
In and out.
200, and then.
But that's why we have the fire access as a requirement, because in case there was a fire, the fire department, if that front one's blocked, they're gonna have to come through that gate.
Got it, okay. And then I have a comment also. Those were just questions, but when the truss company put, which is to your west, when they put up that building, one thing I just was not aware of was the lighting that they put on their building. I mean, it shines all the way up into my bedroom, which is almost 800. And so when you're talking about putting lights up high on the building, and that's a good thing, it hasn't been a good thing for me.
They've come a long way in the last few years. You're welcome to drive by some of our buildings that we've built. I'm happy to give you some addresses. Tonight would be a great night to do it. You can drive by them because they're already lit.
Here's an example of what that building lighting will be here.
They'll shield almost all of the light going horizontal. Almost all of it will come down vertical
This is
and
what
hit the
it'll look
parking
like.
lot and then light the parking lot. It is going to be lit down there, but our intention is not to have anything try to cross any of those fences where they bother you.
And here's an example of the fence also.
You know, we're used to it now, but.
Hopefully this building can slow the stuff down from the truss guys as well, but that truss building's big. It's a lot taller than what we
And they
will.
work all night. They
Yeah.
work 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, and all night long sometimes. And those lights are bright, but we put our blinds down, and we're used to it now. And I think they should be able to use their property. They should be able to work round the clock if they need to. And I'm used to it now, but when you were saying lights up on the building,
Sure.
I'm just curious.
We don't have any tenants that typically are in any of our buildings past about 9 or 10 o'clock at the max, so we don't have any night usually as well. But maybe this will add as a little barrier between the truss guys, I hope.
Well, I am much happier with your proposal than 86 neighbors.
Yeah, it's a better.
86 storage units.
I think they were more man caves than storage units. They were quite big. Those were gonna turn into a different situation, so.
So, it's a whole lot better.
Unless there's anyone else that,
One of my other neighbors was here, and he had to, oh, you're here. Oh, thank you. So,
quick question.
could you give your name, sir? Yeah,
Wayne Whiteley.
okay.
So, how's it accessed? Is that 200 south?
Yeah, it's all in 200 South.
Through the parking
You
lot?
stepped in just a few minutes late,
Okay.
because that was
Well,
her
I
question.
was here earlier, but some
Yeah.
of the other discussions took
It's
a little
all,
bit of time.
all the in and out goes to 200 South, but there is a lane that'll be gated just for fire protection. In case of a fire, the only people that'll have a key to it is the fire department next door if they need to come in off 800 South in case of a fire. The developer won't even have a key to the gate.
So there's
I wish I
access
did.
From 800 through.
Emergency
Just for
from
fire
800 West.
access.
Yeah.
They don't need to get in and get out. They need to,
So it may never be used, hopefully. There's not a fire down there, but it's purely emergency access.
Could you point around that lane so you can see
Here.
right there? That's the lane, the fire lane.
and there'll be a gate right here at the end.
And whose property does that access through?
It was sold by
Robert
Bob
Nielsen.
Bob
Years
Nelson
ago, sold it to him.
sold it
Yeah.
to him.
And they have an easement recorded on the property as well.
And then, so that complex inside there is accessed through the refrigerator parking
Right.
lot?
Right.
And that's
That-
meets city code?
This is how it was all approved years ago, when it was approved as storage units back there. So Chris Olson worked with them.
This wasn't my choice either, but that was a granted
But
easement from years ago.
it's been that way for a lot of years.
It's the only way they could give access.
And fortunately, Chris was here when the storage units were approved to say, yeah, I'm working with them, it can go through my parking lot. So, it was all part of the 70-something storage units that were approved that they just
Right.
didn't end up building.
These are like, what kind of buildings?
Just a couple of buildings now
Yeah,
instead of all
I can show
the
you.
storage units.
Warehouse business.
Warehouse, two warehouse
So
buildings.
there'll be vehicles in and out of there, and there's just one.
Depends on the tenant.
Substantially less. There'll be tenants in there.
Here's that smaller one.
Okay, let's make some
Any other
motions.
questions? Okay.
I have one more thing
Okay.
that I totally missed putting in the staff report. But this area up, so this is, what's your name? Sorry. Jody Olson. Oh, sorry, no, the lady.
Diane Adams?
Diane Campbell, sorry, yes.
Campbell.
So
Campbell.
your property here, it's a residential use or zone, and then this landscaping area is not that 10-foot landscaping buffer from about here to here. And so it would still have, like going back to that screening requirement, there'll still be that 8-foot wall that Ryan will be putting there, and there, it looks like there is some
There's
type
retention
of
on that corner,
retention
so it's
on the
coming up
corner
even
as well.
higher again.
Yeah.
So on the conditions, I said an exact, let's see, an exact address for where the exception is allowed. So if you could add also, see on number 5, an exception is granted regarding the residential landscaping strip next to the eastern property line of 136 South, 800 West, and the southern property line of 96 South, 800 West. Does that make sense?
Yeah, or why can't you just say the north side of his property?
Yeah, you could say that as well.
Okay, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go ahead and close the public hearing, and then we'll bring it up to the commission to go ahead.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. Okay, is there any additional discussion among the commission members or questions for staff?
Nope, this
Okay,
makes
are we
sense.
ready for a motion?
Make it easy, I think you could just put the motion and say as conditions 1 through 9.
Right, not
Okay,
have to
because we've got
say
to
them
make-
all.
The previous applications, we had things to add to
Right.
each motion, and so with this one, I think you could just say 1
We're-
through 9 or
We're
whatever
leaning
the
toward
number is.
efficiency right now. Let's go.
Yeah, we do need, whoever makes the motion can go ahead and make all 3 motions, the subdivision, the site plan, and the zone change, right? And then just list the conditions as 1 through,
Mike's got it.
however many.
Mike, got it?
Steve wants
Okay.
to do it.
Steve wants to.
Come on,
Yeah,
I've been
Steve
quiet,
wants
I'll do it
to.
today.
Okay, yeah, you have.
Just on
Okay.
that site plan one, say the north property line for the landscaping.
On item number 5, under site plan.
This one.
Number 5.
Just, and it's at the end of that, say, and north side landscaping.
So to number 5.
Under site
And
plan.
north side,
Landscaping,
let's see if we can do this.
okay.
I move to approve the applicant's request for minor subdivision approval of Sunrise Warehouse Park Plat A with the following conditions, 1 through 6.
Okay, then going down.
do
Should we do all,
Yeah, let's
Yep.
do them all.
Do all
Then-
3.
we can just do one vote? We
Yep.
have to do 3 votes.
I think you should do each one.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. I second that motion.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Just helps us 5 years.
Yeah.
down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes
The
sense.
voting is unanimous.
I move to approve the applicant's request for site plan approval for 2 warehouses at approximately 860 West, 200 South, with the following conditions, 1 through 7, with adding to condition number 5, the north,
And the north side
And the north-
fencing.
Landscape.
the
Landscaping.
Sorry, north side
north side
landscaping.
landscaping.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous.
Okay, and I move to recommend approval of ordinance 2022-20-0 to amend the Lindon City zoning map from residential R120 to light industrial LI at approximately 860 west, 200 south with parcel number 14065022.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. Okay. And so we've got it taken care of. And I agree, I think this is a much better use of that property than what was previously approved. Yeah.
Mike, I got just one question. So when when the storage units were approved, we didn't already rezone that little piece of residential that the
No, they
neighbor sold off to them?
They picked it up halfway through the process.
Oh, okay.
And they told me, oh, we'll just come back at a later date and rezone that.
Okay, so that's why we're having to do that little teeny parcel
Yeah.
rezone. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it was never done. Okay. I think we're on to the planning director report. Anything from the planning commissioners you'd like to bring up tonight?
Well, we've come across two things tonight that I'd like to recommend we consider changing. One is the fencing requirement. Let's get that 7 feet out of there. I know it says minimum.
Yeah.
But, and then I would like to just have a discussion about the length of time that we give
The
these.
phasing?
The phase. I think there's some argument that it ought to be done.
Yeah.
when we develop it.
To me, the bigger question on the phasing there is that we've already given him, I mean, there's a period of
that was my
time
question.
beforehand that seems like a phasing time, right? And I know that's an enforcement issue, and we're grateful that we have more enforcement now at the city.
Well, if you think about the two that we've done on those, that's this one
Uh-huh.
and the dance thing.
And the
Yeah.
dance studio.
And they've both been problematic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but once something got solidified, then there was a plan and there was a way to hold them accountable. And I'm always gonna side on the small business person, right? If you haven't been a small business owner, you don't know the pain, the challenges of cash flow and all the things, and they're providing jobs. I mean, it's tricky to be a business owner, so I do like to be in favor of them, they're making an effort.
Well, of course, but every small businessman has costs, and he needs to figure it out, and to develop it, you need to develop it. If you're gonna build a house, we don't let you move into that house until the sidewalk, curb, and gutter's in, or whatever is supposed to be there.
It doesn't make it right.
I think there's been like 3 or 4 of these properties that we've had to bird dog the last couple years, and this is one of those. I think this is our last one, hopefully. You know, one was Island Dance Studio. There's this one.
And really, Rob,
There's-
this one here on Fork North, it predates you and I even, how long crap's been going on down there.
This one was ready to start going to legal again. And so this one has been a long time
Let's
coming.
take, for example, the one that we just approved, the gym. Would we give him 3 years to do all of his improvements? Well, no, we wouldn't. Why would we?
What happened back then? What was different? When Tim was building that, what was going on? That,
Tim?
Well, he picked up this property
Tim
later.
Clyde? Yeah.
The biggest problem is it was residential. So see, when we built our building,
You were really the first one to go non-residential, weren't you, up from the pizza factory?
our building was already zoned
Right.
commercial. And when we went, Tim tried to get it commercial at that time and actually it was turned down. And so he had a residential piece, and that's where they were talking about townhomes. There were a lot of ideas thrown out. There was nothing ever approved, but there's a lot of ideas thrown out.
You know, Renee, I'm on the side of the small businessman too, but he has shown not very much willingness to be on the side of the residents who look at his violations for years and years and years.
It's,
but I can see why he might he's looking at the corner of State Street and 400 North and saying, how does someone get away with having that dilapidated corner?
He's not developing it. He's developing it.
Okay.
When the mayor goes to develop it, we'll require it to be improved.
Rob, would it help if we, Rob, would it help if we like shorten that to like a maximum, the phasing a maximum of 2 years?
Well,
With the exception.
I guess
if
you'd have to,
X, Y, and Z
you'd have to
happen, we
convince
could,
me
like-
why there has to be any staging at all.
Okay, okay.
Well, I think it's just because it's
So-
we're trying to fix something. I mean, you know, the person who's used it incorrectly sometimes gets the benefit, but, I mean, because he was using this residential piece technically for a commercial purpose, right? I mean, there were trucks
Yeah.
going through and stuff, and that's,
But we've always been taught as planning commissioners to treat everybody equal, same. We're not doing that. It's my argument. Okay, enough said.
agreed.
So where do we go from here on that? I mean, we've talked about it, but,
My recommendation is
Yes.
just that we have a discussion in the future meeting.
okay, okay,
Staff can bring it up.
Yeah.
okay.
So
That's
it's
good.
added to the list, Rob.
That's right.
Poor Mike.
I
Part of
just-
my problem is those are my neighbors that were here screaming.
Oh, yeah.
And I've had to answer to them, and I've had to drive by that unsightly.
It has looked pretty
eyesore
bad.
for 22 years.
Well, we all do. We all use 400 North. I drive by it too.
It's the
Yeah.
ugliest street in the city.
Were you aware that the city had cut the water off and that's why that all went
That-
dead? Is that not
That's
true?
bogus.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Well, why would he make that up? Why would he make that up? Is that true?
I have no idea. Predates me, it was dead when I started here, so.
Well, because it used to get water. I don't know if it was ever pretty, but when I'd walk, you know, to
Well,
and
we
from
have
work,
been in
it
a
would,
drought,
it
so.
would be,
Well, it used to be irrigated.
it used to be
green.
irrigated, and there was irrigation pipe
I
in
did-
there, but I didn't know that the city,
Why would the city cut him off?
We've had to threaten to even get this point. We almost had to take legal action again to get it
right.
even to
So I
this
can see the
point.
city saying
So-
you don't have a permit for water.
Well,
Because going
so-
from residential to commercial, maybe at that point, he has to get a site plan before they'll turn on secondary water. I don't know.
We're in a good place right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Agreed. Yeah.
It should be a win-win for the neighbors, but I can see why they're reluctant in believing it.
Kind of angry.
Yeah.
The gentleman that was, the most upset, where is his home?
Right across the street.
It is right
No,
across.
it's a little
At the
bit.
top,
It's-
at the east end of the property.
Comes out his front door. It's irritating.
It was Mrs., I forgot her name, who was directly across. 'cause she-
Dorothy,
And she wasn't here.
she wasn't here, that's directly
Who you're
across.
thinking is Mrs. Clark, and she's to
Oh,
the east
she's
of
the,
it.
right, okay.
Yeah, she's
but-
to the east of it.
Yeah.
Well, so he's across the street, but just a little,
A little bit to the east, but,
East,
yeah,
okay.
I mean, you have Carson's and then Dorothy and then you have Mike.
yeah.
I don't
True.
Well,
know the
actually, isn't
depth
there
of
that-
history these
There's somebody
days.
else in there.
He's right here that it's highlighted in yellow.
Gomez is over there.
Not even my steak.
So he is right across the street a little bit, so.
Sisum is just right across the street.
So all that, all of 400
Yeah.
that goes up to here is all in the west side.
Gomez is east of, yeah.
The west side's growing.
They're all
I would be
three
surprised if
right
they move
across the
those two wards.
Newmeyer in the corner.
Yeah.
I'm glad action, I'm glad we're taking action to get that cleaned up. It needed it really bad.
Yeah, it would have been a shame to stay in the status that it's in.
That's right. Okay, is there anything else other than we have a Christmas party on the 20th?
Be on the 20th, if you've RSVP'd for that,
Forgot. It's too late. You gotta bring your own dinner.
might.
And
We've got-
She sent out like 3 notices, Renee.
Yep. Okay. For next meeting, right now, we just have one simple subdivision on 400 North, just a flag lot.
And when is that?
And
That
I never
meeting's
said-
not till January though, is it? Okay.
Yep, so something else may come up before then, but right now, we just have a simple flag lot on 400 North.
Mike, do you have
I just have
anything
my work.
else?
I'm working that night. when
What's
we
that?
get the date.
Right by the park. I'll show you real quick.
Is it midnight? What is it?
Oh, it's only a
Feels like
quarter
it
to nine.
when you're cold like this.
So they're putting a flag lot subdivision in the back here.
So where did that Montgomery?
Yeah, it's probably just set back there.
Well, Let's
So.
go ahead and have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
And I just, one more thing, any of your training stuff, please send to me before the end of the year.
Clock is ticking.
Send it to Mary.
We'll bug you one more time before the end of the year. Any real estate classes,
Why
send
don't you
those
name
to me.
names? Who hasn't done it? Or no, who's finished? Who's completed it?
I'm done.
I'm done.
I have.
Awesome.
I've gotta do that.
And then I just want to thank you guys. You put in a lot of time. We've been here almost 4 hours, 4 hours tonight, or no, 3 hours.
3 hours.
You spent a lot of time.
Three, but it
Yeah.
feels like 8.
We've been here longer than church, so thank you very much. We
Well, thank you, Mike and Mary, for
appreciate all that you do.
together. Appreciate you very much. Well, Merry Christmas to all of you.
I should say.
Likewise. So what's our next meeting, when's our next meeting in January?
Probably the 10th? Is that right?
Make it official.
Is it the 10th? January 10th?
Let's see, we
Can you confirm?
I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
Yes, it should be the 10th. It's not on here yet.
All in favor, aye.
We have to officially do it.